Hello and welcome to a special episode of Collin and Curtis in the morning. This is Collin and Curtis versus Death Stranding.
Versus the BT infested timefall tar pit versus Death Stranding.
The mountainous region filled with snow and just extreme winds that will knock you over and send you toppling down the mountain.
With low roar music in the background.
Yes. So, Collin, thanks for joining me tonight.
Sure.
We're just a few days out from Christmas. You finished just Death Stranding like a week or so ago, I think.
I'd say probably about a week ago okay. That's about right.
So you finished it not too long ago. I finished it yesterday. So it's happened. Hideo Kojima has created, along with his team of hardworking individuals, they have created this game completely separate from Metal Gear. They've done it. It's out. We have finished it. So we're gonna spoil the whole thing. So if you have not, if you care, stop here. I don't think we're gonna have a specific timestamp for spoilers. I think we're just gonna go in. We'll probably start at the beginning, but just be wary of where this conversation is headed. Because we're going to talk about all of it.
You're in the timefall zone now.
Yeah. So, Collin, I guess what I wanted to start with, first off, before we get into story stuff. Obviously, the beginning of this game, and the ending of this game is pretty cutscene heavy. But aside from that, I don't know how long you spent. I think I was 50 hours and 20 minutes was my total playtime. So the other 45 hours basically was all game, or for the most part. There was definitely story kind of sprinkled here and there, much more so than I would say something like the Phantom Pain. But I wanted to talk about the actual game itself and then get into some story stuff.
Sure.
And I don't know how much we'll talk about it really later on, just for fear of forgetting it. I do want to just say, right at the front, the soundtrack to this game is excellent.
It is fantastic.
They have the official soundtrack on Spotify that just has the actual music from different bands and artists, Church's Slow Roar, and a wide selection of others.
Yeah, a lot of Sony music representatives as well.
Yeah. A lot that's played in specific moments in the game, which there's actually probably maybe close to a dozen moments in the game where they were playing a specific track while you're getting close to a delivery site.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of stuff in there as well that I don't think I actually really heard. I'm not sure if it's reserved side thing didn't do, or there are you can find music tracks and you can play them through I think the generators you build or something.
Yep.
So I saw some of the songs there, but I've been listening through the entirety of that soundtrack just while driving over the past month and a half, and there's a lot that I've heard in the game, but there's also a lot that I haven't. The other weird thing is there are two tracks specifically that play at the end of the game. One is BB's theme, and the other is I don't remember the title of it. It's the All Keep Coming song. It's the one that they played at the reveal of the game.
That's a low roar.
Oh, is it?
Song. I think it is.
Okay.
I think that's a low roar one.
Okay, that would make sense. The two of those are not in the playlist that they put out for the the official soundtrack, which was interesting. Yeah. The BB's theme I can kind of understand. It's not super spoiler heavy, but I can understand maybe not wanting that to be a thing that someone could easily come across until they beat it.
Right.
But the other song we've heard numerous times before, so I thought that was weird. But yeah, I just also the score itself, both the soundtrack and the score, I thought were just incredible. Probably some of my favorites for the year.
Yeah, the Ludwig Forsaw, we just kind of watched the Game Awards. He won the best audio design or best soundtrack musical score. I think that's absolutely deserved.
Yeah.
There were a lot of moments that we'll get to. where I thought the music was just like really key, and even times and moments where the music was just absent. I thought that was very good.
For sure. The game as a whole, I think even separate from the music, you can say what you want about that game winning any awards. Due to the nature of that show, I don't really have any problems with it. I think it's fine. But that award specifically, I thought was so well earned. And yeah, just the sound design as a whole. I think you mentioned just like the moments of silence also like meaning something. I feel like not a lot of games like take advantage of that kind of stuff. And I will just mention one moment just because it's kind of towards the beginning. I believe it's chapter 2, so it's if I mix up city names, I apologize because they're all very similar and confusing.
Blank Knot.
So I believe it's the end of chapter 2, and I think it's Lake Knot City that you're heading towards. If I remember correctly, it's right before like basically the first boss fight of the game.
It might be. Yeah.
They play. You kind of come up over a hill, and what's really nice about this game is that you're going down hills is so easy. It is in real life, right? If you're going on a hike and you come up over the hill, you're just kind of like not quite running, but kind of down the hill. And as you're doing that, they play the song. I don't remember the band. The track title is like "Asylums for the Feeling" or something. And I remember that being like a kind of a pretty powerful moment, especially the first like 5 or 6 hours of this game.
Yeah, there's several that really stood out to me. The one, it's the song called "The Machine." I feel like from Low Roar, and that's when you're carrying Mama for the first time. I thought that was like, it was just like how it was like the song was about like struggling to keep going on and that kind of stuff, and it's like I'm like falling down the mountain, like just like sliding down, and I've got like Mama hooked onto my back, and it's like, oh, this was perfect.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and get into gameplay. We'll do just a brief overview of what this game is. I know there was kind of a running joke or not even a joke, I guess. It was almost a meme at some point for the longest time that people were like, what is this game? I don't even know what it is. And I think some of that kind of lashed on to just the general perception of Kojima himself and the kinds of things that he makes. But when it all came down to it, I mean, this game, in the way that any of his games are, gameplay, music, story, like all of it very intrinsically tied together. And with Death Stranding, it is a game about connections, like both in story and gameplay, and everything in between. This is a game about going from point A to point B. You can totally brush it away as like a very elaborate fetch quest kind of deal, but it's a lot more than that. This is a game about a country that has been torn apart, and it's on its last legs, and it's your job to basically say, okay, we have these like cities set up, we have a system in place at the very like ground level. We just need people to take things from point A to point B to start connecting, just like through an internet kind of system, through the chiral network, is what it's called. And so it's more this idea of like, we have people who are separate and they're kind of hopeless without help from other people. And so it is your job in this game to connect everyone. And sometimes that means convincing them that it's worth it. Sometimes it means interacting with people who have lost faith in the system. And, whether it's doing different tasks for them or long, elaborate cutscenes or whatever, like it's about convincing them that it's worth it to join this cause that is noble and that can help the entire country, perhaps the world in a sequel, who knows. And kind of to go along with that, to make it a game that is a lot more interesting than just going from point A to point B, the world itself is essentially a puzzle in some respects. If you think about, Breath of the Wild is a game that I heard this compared to a lot, and I found myself agreeing with. And the fact that it's this huge open world that you can look out, and it's like kind of the joke of like, you can look to the mountain and you can go there. But in a game like that, and a game like Death Stranding, it's more than just looking at something and knowing you can go there. It's about how you get there. So for Death Stranding, you might come up to a river, and that river is like flowing really fast, and you won't be able to keep your balance in it, and so you need to set down a ladder, or maybe later on you can build a bridge over it. And so it's about equipping yourself with the tools that you need to be able to get through whatever obstacles might lay in your path. And for me, and there's it gets a lot more in depth. There are structures from bridges to generators to even to roads and then eventually zip lines that help you traverse the environment in like really cool and interesting ways that is, I think, wholly different from any game I've ever played. And not all that stuff worked for me. There's also a layer that I'm sure we'll talk about a lot more where the economy of this game is essentially likes.
Yeah.
And so there's a whole thing there, but for me, all that stuff worked for me, like so hard. Like I bought into every aspect of the way this game plays. Collin, what did you think?
So thinking about like different structures, I didn't really build all that much of like the PCC stuff.
Okay.
So even like I never figured out how to get zip lines to work, I guess.
That
really.
is mind-blowing to me, by the way.
Yeah, like I would set up a zip line and then I would go to another place that seemed like close enough that I could set up another one. Then I'd set up another one and then it'd be like, oh, but these aren't linked. And I'm like, how do I get them to link? And
so you never had to really do anything. They just needed to be within like the 300 yards or whatever it was.
Yeah, 300 meters.
Or meters, yeah. That makes more sense because it was like, it's a surprising distance. Like, you don't think it will be that far, but you can go like a pretty long ways off. And like what I would do is like I would, set one up, especially in the mountains area. It's like a game changer.
Oh yeah.
Which is like, to me, it's mind blowing that like did you use zip lines at all? Did you have zip lines from other players that you used, or did you just like trudge through it?
I pretty much trudged through it
crazy.
because so here's the other thought. Like I'm thinking about like going back and getting some of like the other trophies in the game, and it's like, yeah, but I need to like
do I want to do
PCCs and like set up all these zip lines, and it's like, do I want to do that? I don't know. But yeah, I kind of trudged up through a lot of it. And
I mean, credit to you.
I know I'm not the only one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the zip lines, what I would do is I would set one up, I would go, and I would look back, and like enough that I could see it in the distance, and I would go to build one, and it will show you a blue line if it's connecting, red if it's not. And sometimes it's red if there's like an obstacle in the way, or if it's too far. And no matter what the scenario is, it will always tell you, I think, along the line, like what the distance is. So if it's like,
if you can read it.
That's fair.
the text.
Although they did patch it, I think, in the last week.
I know they did. They did.
But,
yep.
But yes, fair. So what I would do is I would do that. If it's like 250, I'd go, okay, I'll go a little bit farther. Or if it's like 320, it's like, okay, I'll go back a little ways. And always try and set them up around the 300 mark. But that was like that like especially in I think the like from chapter 5 to like 8. In that range, like that total, like, because a lot of those chapters you're in the mountain area, and that completely like changed, like it had such a huge impact on just the ease of transportation. And that, not to go on too much of a tangent, but for me, like the first couple of times that I started building roads was like a revelatory moment for me.
Sure.
Where like I started building roads, and I went out and then I started doing like optional objectives, and it made it it's like super, super easy to do. And then after like 30 minutes, I started getting just like thousands of likes from people who were using these roads that I was building. And that was like, that was like a huge moment for me. But anyways, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. I got to the part where like I was kind of just tired of everything, so like I basically started driving everywhere. I started renting out like the big vehicles and stuff, and basically just once the vehicles, I ran into a BT or something like that, I just got out and walked. And I guess part of it was like, oh, but I want to be able to pick up like other people's dropped cargo. I want to be able to pick up like Cairo crystals. Like I have so many Cairo crystals. It's crazy. Like I've even tried to like every time I come across like one of the pavers or like somebody else's structure, I try to just spend Cairo crystals to repair them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've got so much of that stuff that, you know, then it was kind of a struggle where you're like, oh, I grab all these items and then I would get caught by a BT and then I would lose all of those things. And yeah, that kind of all sketched the point where like I was kind of, there's a whole different issue, I guess, maybe, but like I got kind of tired of playing after a while. There was about a time, and because I think I finished with maybe 35 hours or something like that. Because there was a time where I basically stopped doing regular like standard orders, and I am just taking like one order at a time, and I am just going to the next place to progress the story.
So I definitely think if this game had come out 2 years ago, let's say, in a time where I had just more, like I spent more time playing games than I do nowadays.
Sure.
I think this is something that I probably would have like platinumed, had 100+ hours in. But I definitely feel what you were feeling. I think in the past like week or two, I was definitely getting into that mindset of like I need to go back to this game and finish it. And so once I like a week or so ago finally went back, picked it up around chapter 5, I think I started really mainlining it a lot more. In that first week or so of playing, I was building roads, I was like doing optional stuff, I was doing everything. And that obviously is not something that scales eventually. Like I don't know if this happens to you a lot, especially with these bigger open world games. That first like couple days, I'm in it knee deep. I'm doing everything. I'm like, yeah, I'm really into this. I'll put the 70, 80 odd hours in. Like I'm ready to go. And then eventually like a week or so passes, and then you hit that point of, all right, I'm ready to finish this. And that happens to me a lot. And it definitely came around with this game about a month or so later. But yeah, what's funny to hear you talk about like being able to pick up people's things. That's like the one thing in this game I didn't do. Is I got the materials from the different cities and I used that to build out roads, but I never really went out of my way to like clear out the bandit camps or to go search out for people's dropped medals and whatever other things that they had. I never went out of my way to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so I put the difficulty to very easy.
Okay.
And the mules were like never a threat because I literally just went up there and just punched all of them.
Yeah.
And then
even on normal difficulty, they weren't really that bad.
Okay. Yeah, so even with a part of that, I see, and this is the first time, this is like an example. The first time I played, let's say, Borderlands, I had to pick up everything. Like, even if the gun was like really bad stats or something like that, I'm like, oh, okay, I'll pick it up and then I'll go sell it or recycle it. And so like every little thing, I'm like, I have to pick this up.
Yeah.
Like I have to collect it. It's the kind of sense that's like, I'm playing a game for trophies and I don't need any more coins, but I'm still picking them up for some reason. Like it's like it's that tick for me.
Yeah.
And so like every time I went across like a mule camp and like got into like one of those pods thing, and I just like took everything, and I am like struggling to carry. I was like, but I have to take this stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a couple times that I did because I think it's just part of like a story mission, or there's definitely parts where you had to go to like a camp and clear it out or get something from there. But what was nice about this game, and I tweeted about it last night too, was that even though there is combat, there are some boss fights. There are parts where you are using a gun, whether lethal or not, to shoot up some bad dudes. It's one of the few games, especially like of this like high profile, like AAA. It's with a game like this, it's so rare to have the main like gameplay loop not be centralized around any kind of combat at all. And for it to be for like the actual thing that you're doing to be something that's like actually like helpful and really hopeful for people. It's like a very like positive kind of thing. I think that's another, and also also to a larger extent as well, the actual like combat itself in this game, I wouldn't really call great.
I would agree.
I wouldn't say that it feels very good, and so like that helps as well. But I think it was just the draw of like, I don't want / need to go out of my way to stealth through a camp or fight through some mules or whatever when I don't need to, because I've got so many other games I can do that in. And it was so nice to like have a game that, like, yeah, I guess technically there's a final boss, but like there really isn't. You know, not in my eyes at least. Like, it just, like, the last, like, a lot of games they end on you beat the final boss and then the final credit, like the final cutscene rolls. And in this game, like, the last thing you do is walking from point A to point B. It is doing the thing that this game is centered around. And granted, it's a very easy, like, last little mission. And I think it's intended to be so. But even the one before that, which is kind of difficult, it's still, it does culminate in, like, a fight, but it's so much of it is still centralized around just getting from point A to point B, using the resources that you have available to help you through dangerous or treacherous ground and getting to whatever your destination is.
Yeah, and I think that goes with that. I sometimes think those moments were a little forced, I guess. And so, like, yeah, talking about the final boss, you have the giant whale, flying whale you're fighting against. And then even the cliff missions where you're in World War One, World War Two. I was playing the World War One mission, like, for the first time, and I was like, thank goodness this shooting is, like, good / like, pretty serviceable, because, like, if it was, like, really awkward, I'd be like, this does not feel good at all. So I'm glad they, like, I know that was, like, a big complaint for a lot of people, that, like, why in this game am I starting to shoot things now?
I think there was even, like, there definitely seemed to be some form of pretty heavy, like, aim assist too going on. It seemed that way to me just based on the UI.
Okay.
Because like you would have your aiming reticle, and even if you're like got off the enemy, I still saw like a portion of the reticle like staying on them. It's kind of hard to describe, but like I definitely noticed it a few times. And that was nice. And you're right. And those parts weren't that difficult anyways. What's funny is I don't know how you played them, but watching like videos of other people talk about those sequences, I played them so very differently. Like, I just kind of ran in and, like, shot them up, and that was it. Or, like, a lot of people were like, yeah, you can stealth through, you can go, like, sneak up behind them and, like, take them out. And I was like, oh my god, like, I did not know that.
Yeah, the World War One mission, I was like, okay, like, I'm like trying to be, like, silent and, like, going through the trenches, and I was like, all right, trying to take it slow, and then, like, I'd see him and I'd shoot him. But then, yeah, even when it got to the World War One, then it's like, okay, well, if I just, like, move a little bit to the right and, like, get behind this rock, then I can just shoot them all, like, target practice.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was usually how I did. Yeah, there was, like, numerous missions, and even, like, kind of fast forwarding to, like, with the Higgs battle, like, there's, like, so many different ways you can take him down. Like, yeah, you can use that rope thing. Yeah. You can, like, throw different packages at him.
I love the, like, just holding the trigger to carry a briefcase in one hand and just smacking it with him.
Yeah.
was so funny to me.
That slow. See, that was even the way how I took out a lot of the mules. Like, once you, like, smacked a mule with the cargo thing, they'll drop theirs and it goes slow motion. You can pick up theirs. Well, and then like, I have, like, 2 packages in 2 hands.
Yeah. And I mean, it kind of, like, gets into, like, just the controls of this game itself were, like, so interesting for what the game was, but in a sequence like that boss fight, or even the sequence where you're carrying the bomb and you need to go and throw it into the lake, just the act of, like, and it's not used that much, but the act of, like, you're holding R2 to hold it in your hand, and you have to I'm trying to remember the way, like, the buttons you press, but you press a certain series of buttons to swing it and then let go. Like,
so you're holding R2, and then while holding R2, you hit square to punch. But then while he's doing the motion, you let go of R2, and then then you can throw things.
And I don't know why. Like, it seems like it's such a small thing, especially if you didn't like play it. But, like, there was something that was so different from, like, between that and then just hitting, like, a square prompt to throw package, right?
Right.
And it like tied into like that's just how the game plays, and so naturally that's what you do. I thought that was really cool and like just interesting. But then the Higgs boss fight itself, like I think probably my favorite one of the game, but I wouldn't even say that the boss fights in this game are things that really stood out to me at all. They were mostly like
I'd say so.
Pretty simple. I like the concept of the kind of like the sludge from the BTs and watching like these buildings come up out of it to create like platforms and like places that you can walk on easily. That stuff was cool to me. But the boss fights as a whole, like, I don't think that they were necessarily like, I wouldn't say they're bad or good. They were like interesting, but maybe not what I was expecting or hoping for the game. I mean, obviously the Higgs boss fight has like the moment.
Yes.
The like straight out of Metal Gear Solid 4, your fighting game health bars come up like that. A stroke of genius.
Yeah, I had a big smile on my face when that happened. Like, considering a moment that happens right after that does a reference that took me out of the experience. This one didn't.
Yeah.
You probably know what I'm talking about. But I mean, like when had the...
I mean, we can even get into it. So like, that health bars come up. It's very clearly like, I don't even know if I would say a reference or homage, but it's doing what they did at the end of Metal Gear Solid 4, where you have the like on top of the big boat, just the fist to fist like combat. It's the camera switches to a side view and it's straight up fighting game, and you're going in the like obviously that part is so much more impactful because you're going through the series of like the health bars are changing. It's as you texted me a few nights ago, Metal Gear Solid 4 is a good video game.
Yes, exactly.
And in some ways, I think, like, other than just, like, that, the act of, like, what that game did with that kind of boss fight was infinitely better than the Higgs thing. But it was but still cool. I mean, that game has, like, a series and a franchise behind it leading up to that moment. But regardless, like, that it was cool. It was fun. I agree. Like, it was definitely like a jump out of the couch moment of like, oh my god. But about like 10 minutes later, there in the cutscene following that fight, there's like a Mario and Princess Peach reference that was in a game that is very bizarre in almost every way. Maybe the weirdest thing in that game.
I like
specifically the scene.
I'm literally scratching my head right now.
Like,
I am scratching my head right. Like I'm just like, how, like, what? Like, and then even the reference after that, like Mario and Princess Peach, and I'm like, oh my goodness, guys.
Wait, did she say Beach or Peach?
Oh, so Sam goes, oh, what? So I'm Mario and you're Princess Peach. Yeah. But then eventually they say like, oh, but how do we get back? Yeah. And that's when that starts them running on the beach. And then that's when Amelie says, we just go like Mario and Princess Peach.
So I totally misheard that. I did not hear beach.
Okay. Yeah, she says beach.
That is even crazier to me.
Yes. Yeah. And I'm just like, oh my goodness.
It's a truly, you know what it like reminded me of? It's a very baffling scene. It immediately put me in the mind of the scene from Phantom Pain, where I don't even remember how this scene is triggered. I remember seeing it. I don't even remember if it's like an optional thing or not. But there's like a sequence where I think it's like Quiet is dancing in the rain or something. Do you remember this?
Yes.
Okay, I was immediately put in the mind of that because it was also just like a very hammy and like weird thing that happens.
Sure.
So yeah, so gameplay
jarring kind of.
There's so much more like we can go into with the actual gameplay of this game. There's like the like system, which so basically there's an asynchronous multiplayer aspect to this game that as you're building up. I mean, I guess we can't go through a podcast without referencing it, but and I don't want to be like, I don't know if I want to be the person that does it, but at least for me, in the opening 4 or 5 hours, it felt like there was a moment for me where I went, oh, this is the natural progression for Dark Souls.
Yeah,
Like
I was
in
thinking about
that
that a little bit.
style of multiplayer where like this is the next step of it, where it's not directly taking that kind of that style of multiplayer, but it's doing its own very own unique different thing with it, which I really appreciated it. And it's just this idea of like, hey, as I'm building roads, as I'm building bridges or laying down ladders or doing or making zip lines or whatever it is I'm making, some of that stuff will just inherently appear in other people's games for them to use. And if you use it, you know, you don't have to, but you can choose to leave likes for people. And so it's just this economy that's built around helping other people. And one, it kind of, again, like builds into this greater message of connecting people, which I thought was like really powerful and interesting. And I liked how that tied in together. But it also, it was super rewarding to, there's something about, you know, trudging through to your destination, like finally getting there and being like, oh my God, that took like 20 minutes. I used up a bunch of ladders. I toppled over a few times. Like I had to run away from some mules. It was a whole thing. But then like along the way, you were laying down ladders, or you were building a bridge, or you did this other thing. And so that when you do make the chiral connection and have to go back, it's super easy. Like, it's like, I built this road. I can just hop on this motorcycle now and I can just get there. There was something like super rewarding about that. And then also getting the extra reward of like people leaving you likes and having those likes continue to be left throughout the entire game. Like you're always getting recognition for it.
Yeah, the little notifications, like the green little notifications that pop up, like somebody used blah blah blah, and then like you see the like counter just go up.
Super smart, and it was just like I mean, I think in the back half of the game, maybe there was less of it. I think that you start kind of getting into a very like centralized focus on the story, and you're kind of like barreling to a conclusion. But especially like you hit episode 3, and at least for me, I spent like 20 odd hours in that episode. That was to me, I think a lot of my memories of this game are going to be centralized on those 20 or so hours in that specific episode.
Yeah, and I think my sense towards like a little bit later was like just get to the end, like unlock more things, and then maybe go do the side stuff. Because like I know like I could be using, I was going to use the word wasting, but I was like I could be using a lot of time doing certain things, but I there basically got to a point where I was like, I am just getting through this game, and it'd be like, oh, well, you could go check out the musician or the somebody else, and it's like, no man, I just need to get through this.
So a couple questions before we get to like story and character stuff. Did you do all of the pizza delivery missions?
So I heard somebody talking about this on like a different Spoilercast I was listening to. I don't think so.
Okay, so I didn't either, and it's one thing I need to look up, because I wanted to look up to see what it was, because there apparently is like a really funny or cool thing that you get for doing all of them.
Okay.
So I'll have to look that up later. But so for story, I just thought of this. This might be a good way to go through the story. Every episode there's 14 episodes. Every episode in this game is titled after a character.
Yep.
And so, I mean, generally the episode kind of revolves around them. Sometimes it introduces them. Sometimes it kind of completes their arc. I think Clifford is a character that has like a few episodes tied to him. Obviously throughout the game. But I thought, what if we just went episode by episode and kind of talked about these characters, and the story as well as we go through, and that way we kind of follow an order to it. Sure. I do think we should probably skip. I mean, the prologue is just called Porter. Episode 1 and 2 is named after Bridget and Amelie. So I think we should probably save those for last.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good.
Just because of those two characters and their importance to the story. But so let's start with Fragile. I am fragile, but not that fragile, as she says.
How many times are we going to say that?
Well, that's one.
In the game. Yeah, I know.
That was, yes. Like textbook Kojima. Right there with that line. Although I think my favorite line of the game is one that's said at the end quite a few times. It's something to the effect of, this gun won't help you here.
Oh yeah, this gun still has a role to play, but it won't help you here.
Yeah.
I think
I think it's swapped. I think it's this gun won't help you.
Yeah,
here,
I think
but
I
it still has a role
yeah.
to play.
Yep.
The first half, like specifically the first half, I think again, like just emphasizing like this is not a game about combat. Which I really like. Yeah, that line is said like 7 or 8 times in the last 2 cutscenes, which is the last 3 or so hours of the game. But so Fragile. She's a character we see pops up literally dozens and dozens of times throughout the game. We've seen her a lot in trailers. She's the character. She's got like black suit, Fragile logos. It's the FedEx to Sam's UPS almost. So like Fragile is also like the name of this like delivery company that she operates under. She's got this like funky looking umbrella that she carries around. She's a whole thing. So episode 3 is her character. And for the most part, it really goes through a substantial like amount of her story and her arc. And she does appear, after that as well. She's in it still. But episode 3 is really like all about her. And by the time you are finished with that episode, like you really have come to understand and learn who this character is.
Yeah, I really liked how they kind of, I feel like more than anybody, any of the other episodes, they really described her character arc by talking to the other people at the other like distribution centers, where you'll hear like somebody will be like, oh yeah, she's a terrorist. And then like somebody else will be like, yeah, she's a hero. And then like, when it kind of comes back to that part where like you meet Fragile again, they're like, yeah, I've been hearing a lot of things about you. Like I really liked how they included that as like part of the gameplay rather than like you're actually hearing it from other people rather than just like here's a cutscene exposition dump. So I really enjoyed that. I do think it's. Oh, go ahead.
I think I texted you like maybe a day into playing this game, and I was just like, this is what I wanted Phantom Pain to be.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think one of the reasons for that is what you just described, is this game does such a good job of, even though, yes, the crazy Kojima level story heavy cutscenes are like beginning and end for the most part, although there are some like of decent length throughout the middle parts of the game. What's so great about it is exactly what you just said. You're learning information about characters, and I think the fact that each episode is based around one specific character gives them like a good excuse or reason to like teach you about this person. Like they'll expand the story a little bit, you get a little bit farther into the main story, but you really learn about this character and who they are. And it's in every chapter it's a new character and it's kind of a new thing. Because as you're learning about them, you're also learning something new about the Death Stranding or something new about what this world even is. And so for Fragile, it was not just learning about her, but you also learned a little bit about Higgs, and you realized that, like, he tricked her. And the things that he does to her, and what she, like, the price that she's had to pay, that a lot of people might not fully understand. Even the people who are out there calling her a terrorist, they don't really understand, like, what she had to do and the sacrifices she had to make. And so having that, and, like, being able to have the hearsay and hearing the rumors and the things that other people tell you about her, and then also like talking to her directly and having that information as well as she's telling you things, and like maybe being a little unsure of like, is she saying the truth? Is she just being upfront with me? And all that culminating in her like finally telling you her story. It made that scene like really powerful to me.
Yeah, she was one of the characters for sure that even after kind of like you see what happens between her and Higgs, like it kind of like clears her name, but like I was still a little bit, I was like, I don't know if I trust her still, because like like it's still only episode 3, kind of in those kind of moments. But yeah, that kind of moment is spurred on by just some guy that looks like Troy Baker who plays a bad guy hands you a package that I'm like, oh, I guess I'm just gonna take this, like, because like we're all just like sitting there like, of course this is Higgs dressed up as a Bridges employee giving us some package that Fragile's gonna see.
So that part, I don't know what, maybe I wasn't like fully paying attention in that scene, or like what was following when they tell you what you need to deliver. But the intention of that is that you have your destination, and I think it's like South Knot City or something, and you like in midway to your destination you meet up with Fragile, and that's when you find out the package is a nuke. I went all the way down to South Knot City. And as I was approaching the city, the package blew up.
Yeah, so I know how that does, because it's a thing that hey, this needs to go, but then you're also told like, oh, don't forget Fragile is also at the distribution center. I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'm just gonna have to take
it blew
this
up,
to her.
and when I respawned, I was right outside South Knot City, and so I was like,
oh, okay,
I guess I got to go all the way back up.
Yeah,
that was a little bit of a bummer, but you went.
Did you have very many game overs? I guess.
Maybe probably not even a handful. Maybe like 3 or 4.
So the bigger one that I had was when you're carrying the antimatter bomb, and I was driving like one of the big trucks, and I swear I barely just bumped a rock.
Yeah.
And the entire like antimatter bomb just blew up, and I'm like, oh, good, this is.
Yeah.
This is.
Good. I had a moment with that one where I was like going down a little bit, I think, like a hill, and I dropped off a rock onto the ground below it, and it was maybe like 3 or 4 feet, but it was like enough. It was like just high enough that it activated it, and I was like, well, all right.
Yeah.
So moving on from Fragile chapter ends. We kind of talked about it like in spurts leading up to this, but you learn that Higgs tricked her into basically delivering a nuke into a city that blows up. Then some other things happen, and she's kind of like she's refusing to basically do his bidding anymore. And there's a thing where the timefall in this game, the rain is they call it timefall, but basically what happens is if you're touched by this rain, the parts of you that are touched, like the aging process is accelerated. So it's why you have to be very careful when it's raining. And so what he does as like a punishment for, not obeying his command or whatever, he kind of strips her down to like underwear and a tank top, and he puts a bag over her head. The ideal being that people would see her face and know, not to mess with him, basically. And he forces her to run out into the rain. And so we actually learned pretty early on into the game, I think even in the prologue, that like she's pretty damaged. I think she like takes her gloves off when we first meet her, and we see that her skin is like super wrinkly and looks like she's very, very old. And I think the implication,
fragile, but not that.
Yes, that. And it's not really stated in the game, but I think the implication is that, because your body itself is significantly older, you have less time to live, I think. That's the whole thing. So then we get into episode 4, titled Unger. And we can kind of like dance over this a little bit. It's the first chapter in which you are put into a war situation, specifically World War One. It's our first interaction with Clifford. So there's a boss fight there, but we don't learn that much about it.
Yeah, we don't even know his name. Like, because like I remember when the episode 4 Unger showed up, I was like, what does that even mean? Is it like a play off of Hunger?
That's what I thought too.
Yeah,
which maybe it was, maybe. But yeah, it's like it's very short. It's probably about 10 minutes long, which is really funny following episode 3. But one thing we do get, so what leads into it is there's like a hurricane style storm, right? That shows up, and it picks you up and it whiffs you off into this other dimension. But when you come back, Mama is talking to you, and she's like, Sam, it's been like a minute. You haven't. Right. You said you've been gone for hours. It's actually been like 30 seconds. So that's kind of a thing where we learned that, like, okay. And the other times that this happens later on, we know that time is going to pass a little bit differently.
Sure.
So then we had episode 5, titled Mama. So Mama has a pretty kind of complicated story. So when she's one of a few characters that we talk to well before we actually meet her. She's like talking to us over the codec quite a bit before we actually come into contact with her. One thing we learn is that she has a BT baby basically like tied to her, which is a little bit different than the BTs we've run into before. She talks to us a bit about how that happened. Essentially, as she was giving birth, the like hospital she was in collapsed and she was under rubble, and I don't know that I can really give a good enough explanation as to how this all happens and the lore reason why it happens the way it does. But when she does eventually give birth, it's like a stillbirth, and due to the nature of BTs and how all that happens, the baby she gives birth to is a BT. And so it's this like entity that is kind of transparent. Sometimes you can kind of see it a little bit floating, but it is connected to her.
She can't leave this like her lab is like basically in the rubble of the hospital where the baby died, because like it was blew up due to a terrorist attack. And so, it's kind of like, because even you get to, I guess it is like South Knot City, and you're like, okay, well, why is Mama's lab like way over here? Like, why isn't it in South Knot City? And then, that kind of gets all explained.
She can't leave, and it's also, I don't know that I don't remember if it's explained before it actually happens, but the actual, like, the thing that is, like, happening to her as well, with her baby being attached to her, is that it's kind of the thing that's keeping her alive as well. And you correct me if I'm wrong. I actually don't think that's revealed until later, until like the end of the episode. But you meet with her and she says, "Okay, like, hey, your like handcuff wristband thing that you're using is broken, or not that. Sorry, it's the keys that you're using to connect each knot city. The Cupid. Spelled QPID. So it's this kind of like key fob thing that you're using, and you're connecting the cities together with that device. She's like, hey, that's broken. We need to fix it. So the way you do that is you need to get to Mountain Knot City, which of course is in the mountains. So you get there, and the person there is super not about you at all. She's not into the UCA, the United Cities of America. She doesn't want to join. She doesn't want any part of the chiral network, doesn't want any part of you. Kind of shoos you off, essentially. So you go back to Mama, and Mama's like, all right, listen, that's my sister. And again, the order in which these things are revealed, I don't fully remember, but basically what you learn is something to the effect of her sister met and fell in love with this guy. He ends up dying, and her sister wanted a kid but couldn't, and so Mama decides that she will be the surrogate mother and will carry the baby to term for her sister. And thus the tragedy that we already know about, with the baby becoming a BT and everything that's happened, that happens, and through that kind of severs the connection between Mama and her sister. And so her sister believes that Mama has kind of like just left her, abandoned her, or taking the baby and run, basically, when that's actually not the case. And so what happens is we have to carry Mama, or when we actually cut the baby loose. So I believe that's when you get the ability with your handcuffs to cut the umbilical cord of BTs. Which is kind of a cool, like, almost stealth maneuver. It's especially in the end game when you're like trudging through environments that's just loaded with them. I was like holding my breath, walking through, and just cut. That's great. So you do that, and again, I don't know. It's not that it's revealed at the moment, but it's basically severing the lifeline of Mama. And the objective from that point is to carry her all the way to Mountain Knot City, which I don't know about you, was probably one of the, like, I don't know if I would say, I don't want to say toughest because it wasn't necessarily difficult, the most arduous of the deliveries in the game, or at least one of them. Just like, because getting the trek to Mountain Knot City is pretty rough.
It is. Yeah.
Or at least the pathway I took. And there was like, at that point, I was kind of like, I didn't want to invest too much more in like building the roads because I was going to have to go out into the camps and get material. So I didn't have a road that was built leading up to it. And I was just like trudging along, and it's rough. There was a couple bridges and some ladders that helped me along the way. But I think that delivery in and of itself was probably like an hour of just like slowly making my way through. It is rough. It's
So I'll give you a little context. I told you at one point I had to completely like factory reset my PS4 through all of this. And so I had made it to the beginning of episode 10, Die Hardman.
Okay.
And when I reset my PS4, I get my cloud save didn't save to the cloud for the recent Death Stranding one because it had been a couple days. I thought it would have saved, and I didn't double check. It was my fault. The first mission I had to replay was the Mama trek, all the way back up to Mountain Knot City. And I tell you what, I didn't realize how much more game I had, but I was on the verge of just YouTubing.
Wow.
The rest of the game.
When I finally came back to the game after like a couple weeks of not playing, and this year, like, this is for another podcast, but this year I've really dove in deep into board games in like a really big way, and like they've consumed a lot of my life, and it's been a great thing because it started board game night. It's been great. So anyways, that's another podcast. But I was like really wrapped up in like all these board games we've been playing each week, and I hadn't touched video games at all. And I finally came back, and that was the first mission I had to do.
Oh,
and I was like, all right, here we go. Oof. This is it. So you finally make it to Mountain Knot City, and big story beats happen. Mama passes, and in doing so, in true Kojima fashion, the two characters become one character. I believe this is the case. You can correct me if I'm wrong. So there's Mama, and we learn her real name, and I'm blanking on what her real name is.
I believe it's Malignant.
It's something like that, yeah. And then what's the sister's name? Lochna. Yes. So Lochna, if I remember correctly, she has green eyes, and then when Mama passes, she then has a green and a blue eye.
Yes, okay. So they kind of merge. They merge into one.
They're played by the same actress, Margaret Qualley, I believe.
Qualley, I think
she was in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood most recently, I believe. Okay. And so they're played by the same actress. They look pretty similar. They have different hairstyles, I think, but voiced entirely by the same person. And there's like some implications that Mama is like in her head as well, and they're both talking, and they like can interchangeably talk. It doesn't really fully go into it too much.
I'm just laughing. I'm like, yep, Lochna cuts off her arm and then takes Mama's arm and severs it onto her, and then Liquid and Ocelot are now severed as one. You know, it's like the same thing basically. Yep.
So, it's also I mean, Fragile to an extent has it, but I think Mama was like the part in the game where I realized, they're not just weirdly named. These characters are like super on the nose with their names. There's a very specific reason why these characters are named the way they are. And I don't really mind. I know a lot of people are like, oh my God. Like they see Die Hardman and they go, good God. But like I kind of eat it up. I kind of love it. But it was definitely the moment for me where like, okay, got it. Mama. Because yes, got it. So then we get into Dead Man. Represented by Guillermo del Toro, voiced by somebody else.
I thought that was really weird.
So he's not the only one. There are, I believe, 2 characters in this game who are like that. Weird, but I thought the actor who plays Dead Man, I think, does a fine job. And it makes me happy to see Guillermo del Toro's form in a game.
Right. I didn't expect to see it this much.
Yeah,
for sure.
He's actually like he's definitely in it a substantial amount, like more than I was expecting. Yeah. I mean, like someone like Mads Mikkelsen, like definitely in it quite a bit towards the end, but he's not in it that much, like on the full scale of someone like Deadman, or Heartman or Die Hard Man, or all the Mega Man bosses. So Deadman, I don't remember too much of his backstory, but basically, like, you learn pretty quick that he just has, like, an obsession with the dead. And you might have to fill me in on this, Colin. I kind of missed, I think, the full explanation, or kind of went over my head, I think, in the act of it. He's got a scar, or, like, stitches that run across his forehead. And maybe I was just getting the wrong message out of this, but the implication seemed to be that he was actually, like, formed from the remains of people. Is that right?
Yeah, that's essentially what I got. That basically, like, it was a sense that, like, he doesn't. I don't know if that is he doesn't have a beach, but, like, almost an implication, like, he doesn't have a soul, because he's just, like, pieced together from, like, other dead people.
Mm-hmm. And this might actually be a good time to talk about what the beach is. At least to the best of our understanding, because I know I can't do a good enough job of explaining it. But through the Death Stranding and through these, like, weird cosmic events, there is a thing called the beach. And the beach is where people go, or, like, their soul form, or their, spiritual form goes. And it's this, like, alternate reality kind of, or it's really hard to fully, like, explain.
It's kind of like and I don't know if I'm getting the right word, but it's not like purgatory, but it's like where you go before the afterlife.
Everyone has a beach. They all have their own unique beach, essentially, but Deadman is someone who doesn't. Which is, like, a key point. So I do have a full grasp, like, at least to an extent, that he, whatever his birth looked like, he was formed through the remains of other people, and he has this, like, very huge obsession with the dead. Hence the name. Now, Colin, you might need to fill me in a little bit more. I'm blanking a bit on his story, at least in this episode. I believe this is the episode where he takes BB from you, correct?
Yeah, he takes BB. I can't remember what it was specifically, but, like, the sense is that BB, or I don't know if it's Lou at this point. It might be Lou.
I think they introduce the name Lou at this point. There's definitely so he comes in and he's like, all right, BB is malfunctioning. And I think there's, like, a throwaway line of, like, well, you call him Lou, don't you? Or something. Yeah. And I believe this is also when it's revealed that, like, Norman Reedus' character, Sam, wanted to have a kid. Or, like, there was something to the effect of he wanted to have a kid. He wanted to name him Lou. Yeah,
he had a wife, and she passed away. I don't know if she was pregnant at the time. I can't remember, but yeah, it's really weird that, like, he just kind of, there's no, like, that's when you get the explanation. Like, he just starts calling him Lou, and even like the menu stuff, just saying, like, oh, Lou looks happy.
Yeah, I didn't remember if there was, like, if there was a moment that I missed in the gameplay where, like, he said Lou, but it definitely comes up, like, very quick. And then then it's just Lou the rest of the game, and I'm like, oh, all right, great.
Yeah, so apparently Lou is getting. They said it's becoming, like, almost like too much like a real baby.
It's becoming self-aware.
Where it is,
like, almost.
Yeah, where it's like it's becoming. It's supposed to be that bridge between the living and the dead, and he's kind of getting too close on the living side.
And BB's, to, like, a very, like, brief explanation, they're stillborn babies that are taken to be bridges from the world itself to the beach. And it's what you use, or it's the weird thing that we saw in the first trailer, and we went, what the heck is going on? But they're basically, like, because they have a connection, because they were born of a stillbirth, they have this connection, this cosmic style connection to the beach, and they're able to see BTs. And so that is kind of the method in which you're able to sense when BTs are around.
Yeah, and in addition to, I don't think we've touched on it, but Sam having dooms, which I don't think stands for anything.
I don't think it does.
It's just
and the weird thing with dooms is, like, one thing, I don't really mind it too much, because I think the intention was that you would use context clues to understand what it was. It's one of those things that is never really explained. which is a little weird because, or at least maybe I missed it, but like they're pretty early in the game. They're like, well, you have dooms, and I was like, okay, well, I don't know what that is, but I'm sure you'll explain it. And I don't remember them doing that, which is kind of weird because Kojima likes to really explain things.
Yeah.
But again, dooms, and he's a repatriate is what they call it, and so at least my understanding is dooms is some kind of condition that means you can't really die in the same way that other people would. When you die, your soul, I guess, doesn't go to the beach. You're able to like go back into your body, and that's a gameplay element. When you technically die, you are in this kind of like ocean, and you are like just first person searching through and finding your body and then coming back to life.
So I guess I felt like, and this is just me interpreting, I actually thought dooms and being a repatriate are two different things.
I think they are.
Okay.
Because he's also got this like, his skin like bubbles up. In some instances, he gets like a goosebumps, like a rash kind of thing. He's like really like doesn't like people touching him. So there's I think that's what the dooms element is, but I don't know, or I guess I took it to be that like if you have dooms, like the repatriate thing probably has some kind of connection to that. But I don't remember, or I either don't remember, or I don't think it was ever fully like explained to how that worked.
Yeah, and I always thought, I guess, the dooms part was just... Because even when you don't have BB or Lou, Norman Reedus still can say... Or Sam still says, like, I can feel you. But, like, you know, the BB actually tells him, like, hey, this is what direction, this is where they're at. But even when you're in those moments, like, Sam can still detect when you're in a BT area. Yeah. Like, he's like, yeah, I can feel that. But, like, can't actually determine where the actual BTs are. And... even on a gameplay level, that Hartman chapter, or not Hartman, excuse me, Dead Man chapter being like in the mountains as well and not being able to detect BTs, I thought was kind of frustrating. Yeah, it was rough. That was where I think that's where I originally started being like, okay, well, I can't do any side stuff because I need to get BB back to be able to detect these things. So I was like, okay, I'm just going. And once, I mean,
and 7's like another Clifford chapter where you're in a war zone, and so you hit 8, and once you hit 8, you're like, all right, I'm in it. Let's finish this. Yeah, I can see that. So 6, Deadman comes to you pretty quick. He's like, hey, we need to fix your BB. It's malfunctioning. He's getting a sense of like human nature to him. We cannot have that happen. They're machines. They're intended to be machines.
And then we get that steamy shower scene.
And then just incredible. So like. So Deadman walks into the shower. So you have your private quarters, and which again, the private quarters, which maybe just talk about. It's again like I think there's a quote, or there's an interview with like J.J. Abrams or something, where they just talk about Death Stranding, and he's like, yeah, it's like quintessential Kojima, right? And like I try my best. Like I love Kojima as much as the next guy, and I'm sure you do as well. But I really like try my best to stress that like, hey, he's got a team behind him. It's not just him. Although I'm totally fine with him putting his name on it. That's a whole other conversation. But this private room definitely feels like this is not something you see in other games. This is a Kojima game thing. So it's where you rest. It's got a bunch of like just interactable things. Some of it that serve not really any purpose at all. A lot of it which does. You can look in the mirror and make funny faces and take pictures of yourself, and sometimes that makes BB or Lou laugh and like you more. You can take a shower. So the shower stall you have, you can shower, you can pee, or you can poop. And all three of those things create a different kind of grenade that can be used against BTs. Because as someone with dooms, Sam's bodily fluids have some kind, like when they touch a BT, they have some kind of reaction that is beneficial to use against them. So basically, they make these like haptic grenades out of your blood or your, I guess your urine or your sweat or whatever, and like you can use them against BTs to destroy them.
Yeah.
It's super weird and goofy, but again, it's something that at least I think in the context of what this game is, it works for me. Like, I'm fine with it. I can accept it very easily. If that, like, I can like it's not something that I'm gonna stress out about too much. It's kind of weird, and like if someone walked up in the middle of me playing it and saw like the act of like peeing, getting grenades out of it, and using those grenades on enemies, like they'd probably be like,
so weird.
Be like, that's odd. That's a bit strange.
Yeah, it's so weird.
But again, like in the context of the game, it's like, yeah, this makes sense. I got it. Great.
Yeah.
So so Deadman's character walks into the shower, and he just like stands there.
Mm-hmm. It's so funny.
And for me, I didn't really. I think the game intends you to be like, oh, I should go check on him. I didn't really see it as that. I was like, all right, this game's gonna let me get in there with them, and it's gonna be weird, but I have to see it. Like I have to know what that scene is. I thought it would be an optional thing. So you go into the shower with him, and he like walks out and kind of gestures, and like it's all yours. And so you walk in to start showering, and then he gets in with you. Dead man fully clothed, you not.
Yeah.
You already hate like being close contact with anybody, and he gets like in your face.
And it's like he's like crouching in slower, like closer and
the
closer.
more he talks, the closer he gets. And again, all for a purpose. Like he's like, listen, whenever we talk, everything's recorded. In here, nothing is recorded, and that's when the cogs of the story machine starts to turn here. This is when Dead Man first starts to kind of plant the seeds that, hey, maybe Die Hard Man isn't who you think he is.
Right. Right.
And it's such a funny sequence. It's so weird.
It is. It's really funny.
But it's great. It's great.
Yeah.
So as you've alluded to, the entirety of Chapter 6, you are without BB. This tool that you've had to detect BTs to help you get through environments that are just BT hubs, essentially, you no longer have. You're also, this is when you start really trekking into the mountainous regions, which are just deep in snow. There's like high winds in certain areas. Like it is not an easy place to traverse. And this is actually the first part in the game where like I didn't get frustrated too much with it, but it's definitely the first time in the game where I really like I had any kind of trouble at all in any BT area. Before this, I never had any issues. They were very easy to deal with. It was never a problem. I was never grabbed by them. This is the first time, and I think it happened 2 or 3 times in this chapter.
Yeah, I didn't. I got pretty frustrated, and because then it's like you're like, okay, I'm going north to like, okay, there's my objective, and then like you get grabbed and you run out of stamina, and then like you get dragged away, and it's like, no, at least take me in the direction I need to go, like to speed this process up, and then like it completely takes you like way off path, and then you gotta escape the crazy BT tar monster, and it just felt like more annoyances to me, like, here we go again.
I guess for me, what probably prevented me from being annoyed by it is in another game that would like trigger this boss, not a boss fight, but it would trigger a sequence where I had to beat them.
Sure.
I think. And so what was nice about this is knowing that like I just need to get away. And granted, it is in the mountain region, and it is kind of that does make it harder. But it was like actually for a game again that looks visually like this game does, it was kind of really interesting to be like atop this mountain ledge and looking below and seeing the tar and seeing these two kind of like lion kind of creatures like hunting around for me. It was like a really like striking visual moment, at least. But it didn't, thankfully it didn't happen enough that I was like tired of it. Or at least that wasn't the part. If there was any parts in this game that was frustrating, it wasn't that for me. But eventually, and this is also, I think, 6 and 8 are probably chapters that, if there is any padding, it's these chapters.
I would agree.
These are chapters where you are kind of working through the same area, and you're just making deliveries to like preppers, essentially, to try and get the chiral network up. Sometimes there's a little back and forth. I think in my favor, I used a lot of the zip line, so it made it less bad. But I can see how not using those really...
So, like, when I basically got to a point and I was like, please for the love of all that is good, don't be like, I hate the UCA. I need you to do these things. I'm like, please don't say that. And then even like the other ones, were when you had to like go get like a camera or like a photograph from one of the mules. It's like, can I at least connect you to the chiral network and then go get him? Or, like it was just like weird, like little weird stuff like that. I had some minor problems with, but
I guess what was interesting for me, and like a lot of this, I think before people. When we started realizing what this game was, maybe before people played it, there was like the instant criticism of like, oh, it's just fetch quests, the game, right? Or it's just a walking simulator, and they're definitely not that there aren't moments where I think it mostly happens in episode 3. It feels like where you go to a person's location, you make the delivery, and they don't let you connect at first. They're like, no, you got to do this other thing for me first. It felt like that really didn't happen that much. Or if it did, you were at least going to the next location. It wasn't like there wasn't a lot of that back and forth. There was some, I think, especially in the first half, but it never truly got to a point where I was like, where I feel like I do in like, let's say a Fallout, let's say, where some characters like, oh no, you need to go get me these 3 things first. I never had that feeling too much, which was nice.
The biggest moment for me was definitely, and this is going back an episode, where you talk to Mama, and then you go to Mountain Knot City, and you talk to Lochna, and then it's like, oh, we'll go all the way back to Mama. It's like, can't I just call her? And like, it makes sense eventually because you have to take her. But
I think that was probably the roughest for sure, because it was they're not close together, and like we said before, Mountain Knot City is hard to get to. I mean, I'm assuming what they want you to do is as you get to Mountain Knot City, because there's a few destinations between, that you're like building a road, or you're putting down things that will help you get there faster on the return trip. But I definitely did not do that.
I didn't either.
So it makes it rough. So Dead Man, you make all the deliveries, you get everything connected, and then you meet him at this like cabin at the top of the mountain. And as you get there, the storm comes back, and both you and Dead Man are whisked off again into another war-torn scene, which begins episode 7, Clifford. So we have the second of the Clifford Unger episodes. This is actually one that's from one of the trailers. I believe this is the trailer that reveals Mads Mikkelsen being in the game. And I don't remember if this is the one where we learned that like, oh crap, Guillermo del Toro's in this as well.
I think it's that same one. I think
it was.
because it was a Game Awards trailer, I think.
That sounds right.
Yeah.
So it's the one where Del Toro's character, or Dead Man, is carrying the BB in his hands. He's like cradling it, and he's running through the city, and you see like a tank drive across a bridge overhead. You see some soldiers walking through. And then you go into the sewers, and that's when Mads Mikkelsen's character shows up. So again, like Chapter 4 before this one, Chapter 4 or Episode 4, you're in a war environment. I think this is specifically World War II now. There's a boss fight. It's essentially the same thing. I think all the encounters with Clifford are essentially the same. There's they act a little bit differently. The environments are very different. But it's like a 3 or 4 stage fight where you're taking down him and his people, or his like skeleton soldiers. But at the end of this, we learn a little bit about him. We learn his name, for one.
Grabs the dog tags when you leave.
Yeah, you get his dog tags. Then you come back, and then Dead Man kind of gives you a little bit of an exposition dump on who Clifford is.
Give me back my BB.
Give him back my BB.
Yeah, that's what we get a lot of.
So, thoughts on episode 7 though? Like, it's kind of split up into 2 orders. One is like seeking out and finding Dead Man, and then you get your BB back. And then the other is the fight itself. But there's like a pretty cool like sewer section where you're going through the sewers.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Which I really liked. And then the fight itself, but. I saw like someone, I think it was on Reset Era, I was reading through the thread, and someone made a comment of like, it'd be cool to see Kojima's next game be something that's set in like World War One or World War Two or something. Because like we get a little bit of a glimpse of like what that could look like and what their interpretation of that is, and like I thought it was like that stuff. It was good. It was nice to have like a very like different visual like environment to go through, especially the third one, the episode 11 one.
Yeah, that's really good.
Which was really good. And so that was cool. And it was also cool. Like, again, this game is a visual, like, tour de force, essentially. Like, and so seeing the firefights happening around you as you're running through the environments and the explosions going off and, like, walking through, like, an actual city that's not been completely destroyed. Although it's getting there. Like, it was interesting to go through those environments. So...
Yeah, I really like the World War II one. I thought, like, the trenches, it's like, you're just kind of going through that. But yeah, the World War II one where you're kind of like, yeah, you are running through it and like stuff's exploding around you and different mortar shots are going off. And there was even one where I was running through one of the World War II part where a mortar hit off and I like fell backwards. Yeah. I got like shot back. I thought was pretty cool. And yeah, going into the sewer I thought was neat. And you really did kind of feel like, yeah, like it felt like a Battlefield game in a little bit. You're like, I'm like running through all these areas.
The sewer also was like another instance similar to throwing the bomb into the lake. It was there was like, again, just a very short, brief moment where it used the controls that have already been made for this other completely different game. And it was like, hey, you can actually do this to make this a little easier for you. And it's specifically if you hold L1, you go to like this first person view, and usually you use it to check on BB. But in this one instance, it's like, hey, you're in a cramped environment. It's dark. If you hold L1, you'll get like the flashlight from your, I don't remember the name of it.
The scanner thing.
And you can use that to see. And so you basically like play it first person through the sewers. And you got your flashlight, and it's like a very atmospheric area. And again, I just thought that was like really cool to be like, hey, this is like the one time in this game you're going to be in this kind of place, so do this. Which is neat. So you get back, you kind of return back to your private quarters after that fight. Deadman is with you, and you basically learn a little bit about who this Clifford Unger guy is, but not a lot. We just know who he is now. We know a little bit of his backstory, but we also know that it's weird that we're like showing up in these war environments. Because he wasn't necessarily around for them. But with that said, we go into episode 8. And Collin, walk me through my favorite cutscene in this game.
So I'm assuming when you first meet Hartman, you go up to his nice $1 million mansion
it's
that
like
he's got just hanging out in the mountains.
Along the mountain next to this like lake that is shaped like a heart.
Yeah.
And it triggers a pretty lengthy sequence. But Collin, what happens here? This is my favorite. This is probably my favorite part of this game.
So you go in, you kind of get scared by like some like frozen BT monster, and you just see, I believe Hartman's just like lying there dead, pretty much. But then you end up finding out that, hey, my name's Hartman. And I die every 21 minutes for 3 minutes so that I can go to the beach and try to find my family that has passed away. I really like the part where, I think we're probably alluding to that, where you basically just stare around the room for like 3 minutes. And, even before that and after that, like Hartman's like giving you likes with like a thumbs up. I love those GIFs that like people are just like, someone says something in Twitter comments and then somebody just posts that GIF of just Hartman giving you a thumbs up with a heart and 20 likes. It's fantastic.
He even takes away likes from you at one point and then gets...
Yeah, he does. He's like thumbs down.
His intro scene, I think it might like... we talked before, Death Stranding is not my favorite game of the year. It's my number 2. That scene, the intro scene for Hartman is probably my favorite just scene in a game this year. It's lengthy, like, so it introduces like, hey, every 21 minutes I die, I flatline, I go and explore the beach because I'm trying to find my family who has died from this horrific accident, and I've been trying to find them for ages now. But then every 3 minutes he's revived, and so he repeats this process. And like even his entire home, like the floor is padded. Everything is like set up in such a way that if he's not fully ready, like if he just topples over, he'll be okay. He's got a glass hourglass that he always ensures to flip over
right at the last second,
like as soon as he can, to keep track of everything. And that even plays a role later on. You meet with him because you've also I think you deliver Mama to him, right?
That's right. Because her corpse is not necrotizing.
Yeah, and that's super important because when people die in this game, they create void outs, these huge craters, and like so if someone dies, you have to incinerate their body. But Mama's not doing that for whatever reason. So that's a whole thing in and of itself. But in this, like he talks to you for a while, and I don't think it's the full 21 minutes, but it's a good amount of time. And then eventually it's like, oh hey, you're gonna die in like a minute, and so it puts a timer on the screen. He flatlines, and then for 3 minutes you sit there, and you just look around the room, and there's like things that you can zoom in and stare at, and like that there's interactions that can be had, but it's the full 3 minutes.
Yeah, and you get like different likes for looking at certain things. So that was, one of the moments I had to play twice because I had already played through that. So like now the next time, like, okay, what else didn't I look at? So I just got even more likes after that.
And you can't skip that part. Like you can skip cutscenes, but you can't skip that part, right? Okay.
Yeah, I couldn't skip it. Yeah, I had to sit there for 3 minutes.
So
it's really cool that in his room he's got like movies that last like 20 minutes and like certain stuff, some like things like that.
The entire conceit around his character is one that would raise a lot of questions, but this entire like cutscene with him goes out of its way to answer those questions. He's like, like what does a guy do with 21 minutes? Like, I read, I have these movies, I have these, like, I feel like part of him is just Kojima. Like, he's like, I watch a movie every night. But he even talks about, he's like, like, sleep is an issue. I gotta figure that out. Like, that part's tough. But, he's
even just talking about other things, and Sam's just like sitting there, just like
such a fascinating character. And Sam has has no idea how to even react to a lot of it. But his chapter again is one that he needs your help kind of connecting some different preppers. There's some things that they have going on that he needs help with. But what's interesting about his chapter story-wise is he is someone who researches like history, and he there's a lot of like scientific stuff that he's into, that he's like he kind of feeds you information on. And one of the key things you learn is this ideal that humanity in and of itself has had these like 5 extinction events. There's like the dinosaurs, there's this, there's that, whatever. Or not humanity, the Earth itself. Sorry. And so he talks about how basically it's his belief that they're currently in one, that the Death Stranding is leading to an extinction event level thing, but it will be one of a greater size than the ones in history. And he talks about how the ones in history, he believes were Death Strandings as well. And it really starts really giving you a bunch of lore and crazy backstory behind what the Death Stranding is and where it comes from and how these things happen, and this ideal that there's an extinction of an EE, which they call the extinction entity, and that is the thing that causes the Death Stranding and the mass extinction of whoever, whatever is living at that time.
Yep.
And I don't remember. So episode 8 wraps up with you getting to close to, or not necessarily your final destination, but really close to it, right?
Yeah, you finally end up at the end of the central region, and that's where you begin to cross the tar belt, as it were. And I didn't know what to do for a while.
Okay.
I would say you may be the same, because I was on the verge of looking it up online.
I think I kind of had a clue. I had a hunch, but I definitely stumbled upon it very quickly and very easily, and was like, all right, great. But so there's a tar belt. You know, like you have your first section of kind of small open world environment that you have in your first 2 chapters. Episode 3 sees you getting into the main, like the major open area that you're in throughout most of the game, up until the end of 8.
Yeah.
And then from there, to get to your final destination of Edge Knot City, there's this huge tar belt you have to cross. And the tar is the stuff that comes up when the BTs grab you and pull you under. So I'm curious how you ended up coming across it, what happened where you were able to figure it out. But for me, I don't remember. I remember like hopping in a vehicle and driving around, and I got I was driving along like one of the, I don't know if it was a bridge, but it was kind of like maybe the ruins of a building that was like kind of over the tar. And as I got closer to it, the vehicle immediately got pulled under. And then I started to get pulled under. And then I think it was Heartman or someone, or maybe Die Hardman, like came on the codec and was like, oh, that's a good idea. I wouldn't have thought about it. And essentially the buildings start coming up out of the tar. And so you use those buildings to cross the tar pit itself.
Yep. So originally, like, even the first time I did it, I like just tried walking. I'm like, I don't know, because even part of it was like, oh, check your email. Yeah. And I think so and so sent you an email on this.
Like, and it's one of those things like in the game, and a lot of games do this, right? Where typically it's very obvious, but I think even Die Hardman's like, I think you probably know what you need to do.
Yeah.
And like this game does it a couple times. And in that time I just got lucky, but the other time this game does it, which we'll talk about later, I was like, no, I don't know what I need to do. So yeah, how did you said you almost looked it up. Were you able to eventually figure it out, or?
Yeah, just trial and error, because there's that area where there's some like BTs right around that broken bridge thing for the tar belt, and yeah, eventually I just went back there, got pulled under, and then it was like, oh yeah, I didn't think of that. I'm like, me neither, apparently. Yeah. Like I guess this is what I need to do now.
That's funny. So you cross the tar belt, which I thought it was a kind of a cool sequence. Like it goes on for a while. There's like the whales or like you see things coming up out of the water or the tar, I mean, and you're like jumping over into the other buildings, and like just eventually you see Amelie like standing in the middle of the tar, and you come up to her and you get pulled under.
Yep.
And this leads to episode 9, Higgs.
Yep.
And this is like, I think it was right around this part where I was texting you the other night. I was like, all right, how much longer do I got? Am I finishing this tonight? And you're like, yeah, the end game basically starts here, but it's long. I'm like, great.
Yeah,
good.
It is. Yep.
So, Higgs, that chapter, it's like 3 orders. And then after that, every episode after that is just 1 order. And order is like the name of their missions in the game. So the Higgs chapter is you basically get to Edge Knot City. You go through the ruins of Edge Knot City, which gave me kind of a Last of Us vibe.
Yeah, I'd say that. Yeah.
You encounter these like jellyfish style BTs, which are kind of interesting.
They're like giant brains, it seemed like. Yeah.
And they like blow up near you, but I never really got like what they were actually doing when they blew up.
I think they took a little bit of like blood from you or health from you, but I didn't really have much of a problem.
And it was also right around this time that I knocked the difficulty down 1. Not like it was. I never had like a moment where I was like having a hard time, but it was like this was the moment where I'm like, I'm ready to finish this game. I know there's going to be a couple bosses coming up. I'd seen some people online express frustration at I think like episode 12 or something. So I was like, I'm going to like proactively try to avoid that. So I knocked the difficulty down, like heading into Edge Knot City. There's before the boss fight. You'll have to remind me. Is there any big story beats that happen before that boss fight?
So you get to Edge Knot City. They're like, oh, Amelie's waiting for you in your private room, and you get like a vision of like giant Amelie, like walking towards you, which is basically like foreshadowing for the boss that's going to happen. Then you wake up, alarms are blaring all over the place. That's when you go out. You can craft a quad rocket
there's
launcher.
Which is great. There's like a very I think the only time in the game there's a very direct like, you should craft weapons. And I don't even know if it's
very
like a
much so.
tooltip or anything. I think it's like on the intercom or something like that. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's just a very
Yeah.
direct like, you should make some weapons. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Then Higgs shows back up and tells you that, you know, all of these things have been leading to the last Big Bang,
The last
void
stranding.
out, the extinction. The extinction entity. There's been 5
Yeah.
other ones, and this is number 6.
And this is this when he tells you that Amelie is an extinction entity?
I think so.
I think so as well.
I think you're told numerous times.
Yeah.
Like, I'm an extinction entity, so it's like hard to remember when the first time is.
I think it's I think this is the first time, and then you hear it from her like 7 times. But
yeah.
So that boss fight, what did you think of that fight?
So kind of with this one and the final one with the whale,
Yeah.
like you're just pouring rockets and bullets into it. Being it on very easy, I defeated it so fast that I didn't even recognize that there were other players like souls like throwing ammo and blood bags and stuff like that out.
It was so that thing was so funny, like that part of the gameplay, because the first boss that you fight, the first one in the game, I had nothing. I had no grenades. I didn't have anything, and I remember just running around like kind of trudging around through the tar, looking at this thing and being like, how am I gonna beat this guy? Like, what is going on? And eventually this like human form comes up out of the tar and throws a grenade at me. I'm like, oh, got it, great.
Yeah.
But I want to ask you, like, what did you think about? So, in moments like this when you have to fight, you know, you craft weapons, but once the weapon is out of ammo, I guess you can like recycle it, but you got to pick up a new one. You're not picking up ammo; you're picking up another gun.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know, like this fight itself, you're right. Like it was. I mean, even. So I believe when I turned the difficulty down, it was after this fight. Because this fight, I remember like the health bar took a while to get down, and I think I think what it was immediately following the fight where I'm like, I'm gonna turn the difficulty down, because I didn't die, or I mean you can't die. I didn't like die any at all. But I remember it being just kind of like taking a while, and it just being like, all right, I'm good.
Yeah.
And I think, like, I like the ideal of fighting these BTs, like, in their environment where the tar is coming up and the buildings are arising every so often. But I think the more and more it happened, the more and more it was like, this isn't great. You know, and I'm like, I have these weapons that I can use, but then I've got to, like, grab a new one, and, like, the ammo you have isn't nearly enough, so you're, like, going through, like, a handful of guns.
You're remembering that the game was not built for this, but you're kind of forced into this moment where you don't really have that much of an area to run around because one, you're kind of trapped in a back lot, and then you've got all of this tar sludge stuff. So yeah, I can certainly see where it can be frustrating. And then like the big boss is like sending some of those jellyfish monsters out at you. I didn't have too much trouble, and of course I'm playing on very easy
and I mean
difficulty.
I didn't really find it frustrating or anything. I guess it was more just kind of boring, or it wasn't like super interesting to me, because even in relation to the other like BT boss fights in the game, they at least were in areas that were a bit more open, and so you could go from like different building to different building that was coming up out of the tar, whereas this one, like you said, you're in like a back lot. There's not really much room to run around in. There seemed to be some kind of barrier even. And so, yeah, it was a lot of really just standing in mostly the same area and just firing until it was dead, which I call Borderlands 1 syndrome. So,
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, and the boss looked cool. I was like, all right, this is neat. But that fight does lead to Higgs taking Amelie into the beach, to her beach specifically. So you have to use Fragile to get you there, essentially. So there's a scene between the two of you where she's like explaining like how you get there. Like she can't come with you, but she can get you there. And this leads to the Higgs boss fight that we talked about a bit earlier. So I don't know. I mean, we kind of basically talked through the fight. It's in a couple stages. It's fun. It's pretty simple, and it's not that hard. And like if you just explain the process of the fight, it probably doesn't sound all that exciting. But in the context of the game, I thought it was super well done, and it's probably one of the more memorable moments of the game for me.
Yeah, I think so too. I have a question though. Did you throw the PlayStation system at him?
I'm sorry?
Okay, so yeah, one of the packages you can pick up.
Oh, man.
It's still a box,
Yeah.
but like there's like different ones. It's like, oh, the chemicals and like house plants and like old media. There's one that says PlayStation system.
Oh, that's so good.
That you can pick up.
What do you think
and
it'll
throw
say
at
on the
him.
PC version?
I wondered that too.
Do you think it'll still have that, or if it'll be just like a random PC thing?
Windows 98 box or something like that. Yeah, I don't know. I was thinking about that, but yeah.
Will it be like Pear or like something that's named after something that's real but isn't? So instead of Apple, it'll be like, Pear or Peach or whatever.
Pear.
Or I think
Yeah,
Pear is used somewhere else. There's some other movie or game that uses Pear.
Isn't like GTA 5 does pears
maybe.
or iFruit or something?
Is it Life is Strange? Maybe I don't know. Anyways,
but yeah, there's those little PlayStation reference
Yeah.
In there. Of course, doing the Kojima.
So that
thing.
that fight's a lot of fun. It leads to the scene we talked about earlier where Sam is talking to Amelie and he compares the two of them to Mario and Princess Peach. You get the weird running sequence, and then eventually she stops and she's like, "Wait, hang on a moment." And she climbs up over this ridge and kind of vanishes, and you follow after her. And the sequence the scene that you are seeing is just very baffling, and it kind of, again, like it starts to really speed up the, like, all right, you're in it. Like, this is the end game. Here we go.
This is the end game. Yeah.
So, so we come up over the ridge. Collin, what is it that we see?
We see numerous people. We see Bridget Strand,
who is dead,
there,
by the way.
who is dead, and something about, like, since she's dead, she doesn't have her beach anymore, so why are we seeing her? Then we see Die Hardman holding a revolver at Bridget Strand, where then after that we have a Clifford Unger and the skeleton soldiers come back.
We skipped over it really quick just because we're about to get into Die Hardman stuff. We talked about the scene with Dead Man, kind of being like, "Wait, we're not being recorded. Die Hardman, this is what you need to know." I believe it's actually it might be somewhere in episode 8 where Hartman also does some little trickery stuff, and he like finagles with the system that kills him and brings him back to life, essentially. And like, because when the alarm goes off, he doesn't die, and you're like, "Wait a minute, what?"
Yeah.
And he's like, "Oh, I messed with the timer. They're not recording us. I need to talk to you about Die Hardman." So we've had the warnings, and now we're here with Die Hardman gun to Bridget, and then continue.
So then eventually Clifford Unger skeleton soldiers come back out of the water, kind of looks at Die Hardman, is like, basically kind of gives him this like, "you're all right" kind of look.
Calls him John.
And then calls you John, right? Clearly Die Hardman, John McClane, Die Hard references all galore. Kojima. But yeah, Clifford's still looking for his BB. Tries to ask Bridget where it's at, clearly foreshadowing into other things coming soon. But then eventually Bridget points towards up to the hill where Sam is, where where the BB is, and then Amelie shoves Sam back into the water, which brings him back to life, which repatriates him. Where then we kind of get the explanation that, hey, everyone's here. Super Smash Brothers style, but
So you're back in your private quarters, and Dead Man, Heartman, is it Lochna?
Yeah, Lochna's there, Fragile's there.
All your friends, everyone's here. And you're back at the private quarters in
I think is it
or no, so it's the private quarters. It's where the tar belt is, but you've not
that's what I was
thinking.
not
been in those private quarters because they're like underground. So you don't really interact with them, but you're there, and they're like, "We're back here at Lake Knot City, or wherever."
Well, I think it's like Capital
Knot
City, which is like where the very beginning is.
The beginning of episode 3. So you get to Lake Knot City, you take the boat to Capital Knot City. So they're like, we're all the way back over here. Come to us.
Yeah.
Come back. And there's no fragile, fast traveling you because she's too weak. And you need to actually deliver some things for her to help her. And
mild video game spoilers for a video game we've talked about before from 2011.
Yeah.
When there was the Fragile's Too Tired, I immediately thought of you and Infamous 2 at the end.
Oh.
I didn't mean to bring that up, but I just immediately thought, I was like, oh, great. Curtis is going to love. He's going to love this.
So I didn't even think about that, although I will, I am always disappointed by the ending of Infamous 2. But, I think, because the crazy thing is episode 10 is that. I'm in this phase of like, okay, I know there's 14 episodes. I know I'm at episode 10. I know each episode is like one mission, quote unquote. Even though some of those are like long and then some of them are like 5 minutes, right? And when they said that, to me it was almost like a victory lap kind of thing. And I just didn't mind it. But also I took a very weird path back. I'm curious to know, because like for me it was like, man, if I had spent like 100 hours in this and I built up my roads, I feel like I did a pretty good job with the zip lines. Like feel very good about the zip line system I had going. But if I had built up the roads, like I could have gotten back there in like 5 minutes and it would have been incredible, because I would have zip lined most of the way back and then just hopped in a vehicle and taken the road, and it would have been like this. Like, I already had many of those moments already, so I was okay not having that. But just thinking about it was like, man, that'd be really cool. But what I did is I basically went along the south side of the entire map, like along the mountain region. It wasn't in the snow. And it was literally like along the edge of the entire game map, all along the south side, until eventually I came out near the Timefall farms. And then I went up from there. And the roads that I had built went down past South Knot City, or not South, Middle. Is it Middle Knot? I don't. The roads went down close to where the I think there's like the wind. God, is it like the solar farm or something? I don't remember. Not the wind farm.
Yeah,
it's
I
like
don't remember
the names.
There's so many that
locations.
You just see.
Yeah. There's one that you go up to that's like close to the mountains, and it's before you start like doing the mountain area. But they
might be the distro center. Maybe.
But anyways, regardless of that, my roads led pretty like most of the way down towards South Knot City. So once I got to the Timefall Farms, I just had to go up a little bit, and then I hit the road, and I was able to just drive up the rest of the way. So I didn't really mind it too much. I think the entirety of crossing the whole map was probably like 15 minutes. Maybe 10 or 15. So it wasn't terrible. But it was definitely a moment of like, oh man, if you're someone who's playing this game, who's like maybe not super into it and ready to finish it, I could see that scene being like a soul-crushing moment.
Yeah, when you get to that area right at the tar belt, I held L1, look at the compass, and like look at the marker that's all the way at Lake Knot City, and it's like 6,000 meters away or something like that. I don't remember what it was. I was just like, oh my goodness. And of course I got on a vehicle and tried to drive all the way there. Luckily there's some dialogue and different narrative story beats in between that. So that helped. It was towards Lake Knot City. I did pretty good building roads. So once I got there, it was just kind of like smooth sailing for the last like 2,000 meters. But yeah, there was a little bit that I was just like, oh my goodness. Like it was just like, I just want this to be over. But yeah, so you get all the way to Lake Knot City, where you do see another... no, so I was even thinking Lake Knot City is when the next storm happens.
Oh, that's right.
And that's when you're transported to Vietnam, where then I think it's the next episode, which is just Clifford Unger, episode 11 starts.
And you like to remind me, so episode 10 is called Die Hard Man, but...
Yeah, you don't really get that much from Die Hard Man.
Yeah, I don't remember if there was a whole lot. There was like leading, like, as you get closer to your destination, there is Deadman will come over the codec and he'll be like, "Hey, I learned this new thing."
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's just stuff that's it's just things that are building towards something.
I think the big one was through that was that the BBs were like experiments from the past, and like apparently it was shut down after this incident, but then like no, they were still continually developing them, and it was Bridget Strand who wanted to continue to develop them. It was that was a lot of that kind of stuff.
And I think that was some of that stuff was things that we knew already, or I kind of knew a little bit about, but not the full picture.
Right.
But yeah, so we get to episode 11. Talk about the environment of this episode.
Snake Eater Remastered looks great. I don't know about you. But yeah, you're in the Vietnam setting, and like right when like you start that area, you have this like helicopter that looks like a Huey helicopter straight out of Vietnam, from like whatever Vietnam movie you
insert
like.
Whatever Vietnam.
Yeah, and it's pretty identical, I guess, in some sense to like the World War II thing, where it's like you're kind of just running through the environment for a little bit, and then you kind of get to like the big areas where Clifford and his soldiers show up and has his cigarette in his mouth, and like we've seen part of that in the trailer, one of the trailers, where like the whole lake turns on fire once he throws a cigarette.
That actually reminds me, I meant because like there is in that episode specifically when he first appears and he rises up out of a tar pit. That shot specifically is in an earlier trailer, and I remember in the moment, like when I was there in the game, thinking, "Oh wow, they were showing some pretty late game stuff, and we didn't even know it." I need to go back and watch the launch trailer because I've heard the launch trailer has like crazy spoilers all over the place.
That's kind of what I heard. I didn't watch it, of course, when it being so close out to the game. But yeah, I've heard the same thing. But yeah, you have a little bit more areas to like be stealthy, but of course I just took the assault rifle and just ran around and shot all of the skeleton soldiers. And this is kind of when you start seeing a little bit of the reveal of who Clifford really is. And you kind of start to learn that like, hey, he's not such a bad guy.
Yeah, like a lot of the game there's mystery, and even leading up to the game's release, like it felt like Mads character Clifford was being played up to be a villain, or that's what it seemed like. And I mean, it felt like even in the game there was that mystery, and even I think when you see the scene on the beach with Clifford and Die Hardman, like I think even one of the characters is like, oh, so Clifford was pulling the strings the whole time, like it was him. And so there's definitely a lot of that buildup of like, oh, he's the big bad, but he's not at all actually. And I don't remember what all is said at the end of episode 11, but it's really kind of the moment where it feels like he makes peace with you. You might remember more than I do. I don't remember like how that scene plays out. I just like it's kind of in his dying breaths almost. He kind of makes peace with you. I think he gives you the dog tags again at that point, or gives you something.
So he tries to reach after BB again, or Lou, and then this time Sam kind of like allows him to hold on to it. And that's when you start getting the other flashbacks. You're like, oh, wait a minute. That, because like where you get the BB's eyes, like first person, like in the pod, flashbacks that we fully get revealed later. You get to see like, oh, that's clearly Die Hardman without a mask talking to Clifford Unger, and that's when you start hearing that, hey, I served under you. Your family doesn't deserve this, kind of sense. I don't really remember like what he gives. And it might have been the dog tags again, but it is kind of foreshadowing when I went back and watched it originally, where Clifford is clearly in all of like the military gear, but then when he hugs Sam, he turns into that like final scene where Sam and Cliff hug each other, and then the gunshot goes off. Yeah, it's like clearly just like parallel right there. So and it is kind of like still like what's happening, what's going on, and it isn't the last, I guess maybe the last time Sam necessarily sees Clifford, because you have the kind of ending revelatory thing. But yeah, basically after that, you kind of wake up. You end up at not Lake Knot City, but the one that's out there on the other side of that Lake Knot City. I can't remember what it's called. Port Knot City, I think is what
that
it's
sounds
called.
right.
I'm trying to just...
You end up there, and you have the last... you're in episode 12, Bridges. I
was trying to remember at this point when it's like, when do the episodes separate each other?
Yeah,
I'm trying to remember.
So, like, definitely the last, like, a few episodes really kind of blend together pretty much. So I think from here on, we'll probably just talk through the ending of this game. So you have the last trek awaiting you. It's specifically the area of the map that you're in for episode, like, 1 and 2. Essentially. And the trek back isn't that bad. There's a couple like BT heavy spots. It ends up leading... I didn't really have too much issues. It does lead to what is essentially the final boss. It's the giant floating whale. So we talked about that a bit. So you beat the whale. You go into... Is it Capital Knot City?
I think it's Capital Knot City, but also kind of interesting to talk about. I think it's right before you go back to Capital Knot City, you get a message from Die Hardman that Deadman has found, and it's basically like, has anyone ever seen Amelie?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Has anyone like ever been in the same room as her?
I think that has to be in episode 10.
Okay,
because you're in your private quarters, and Deadman's talking to you, and then that's when you see it. And yeah, it's like that's the first moment where, it's kind of like he's not really speaking to Sam, but he's definitely challenging Sam's notions of what's real. And it's that Amelie's group that she went west with, like all of them died except for her. So there's no one alive really that has ever seen her. And again, it starts setting up this like, well, what's really going on?
Yeah, they had like a big thing in this chapter. I think it was like with dolls, like they were holding up like plastic baby dolls.
Yeah.
And I was like kind of having trouble like how those were also used as BBs or used as like connections. It almost seemed like
those were like the original experiments or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't too deeply explained, or if it was maybe something I would understand more on a second passing or something. So yeah, you get back to... I might be mixing up the order of events here, but you get back to Capital Knot City, you give Fragile the things that you needed to deliver. You're all together, chatting. And what... I'm trying to remember, what happens that gets you to Amelie's beach?
I do believe because
that transports you there, right?
Yeah, because you give her like some supplies, and it might be just more like of the crypto bites, because they were like, oh, you can't submerge them, that kind of stuff that happened in the gameplay. But yeah, you kind of heal fragile. I'm fragile, and then that's basically when you're
fragile.
Yeah, it's basically kind of when you get told that, hey, Amelie is an extinction entity. You have basically two choices. One is to try to talk her out of bringing on the last Death Stranding, or you can kill her. But if you kill Amelie, you are stranded on the beach forever. Yeah. So, and you kind of get that final like pep talk from all your friends, because Lochna and Hartman and Deadman, everybody's there. Yeah. So you get transported there, and I want to say that next scene is actually when you are like a baby and Amelie picks you up, which is kind of like a scene you see multiple times after that. Yeah. But you do end up waking up on the beach. You see this giant like extinction event thing in the distance. It's like, very kind of like blood red sky.
It reminds me a little of Bloodborne. There's a point. Did you ever finish? Or I think you played it, but did you ever finish it?
Probably not, I played maybe like 2 hours of Bloodborne.
So there's a part of Bloodborne pretty far into the game, maybe like 70% of the way through the game. Once you beat a certain boss and you go back to like the main area that you're typically in Yharnam, there's a part where the sky turns like blood red, and there's like this blood moon above the city, and it's very like apocalyptic feeling. And it reminded me of that a lot.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, this is a really big exposition dump where like
I
you
mean,
start getting talked about, like the seams were thrown around
from
and
this point on,
antimatter.
I don't even remember what episode we're in technically at this point. If it's 12 or 13, I think it's 13.
I wonder if we're in. I think we might be in Sam Strand.
Yeah, I think we're episode 13, Sam Strand. So from this point on, there's probably, I think you even texted me something to the effect of like, it's like 2 hours left with about 10 minutes of gameplay, or 10 to 20 minutes of gameplay, something to that effect. And that doesn't necessarily, like, it's weird because some of the cutscenes, like that entire sequence is, let's say, an hour and 10, but the cutscenes is like 5 cutscenes where like you have like 10-minute one, and then like you walk around for a little bit, and then you have another one, and then you walk around. So that one, that's specifically what's like happening now is, I don't remember what leads up to it, but basically you're on the beach alone, and so there's like this stop and start kind of thing of you just walk. I don't really know if there's even like a location you should go to, or if it's just a timer you're on. I don't know if you could just stand there and wait, but you walk, and eventually after walking for however long, like a minute or two even, Sam sits down to take a rest, which he will do in the game sometimes if his stamina's too low. And when he sits down, Amelie appears, and she'll walk around you in circles and kind of just give you an info dump. And she'll start giving you backstory about her and other events. Yeah. And you do this over and over again, like 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, that started going on a little long. I think it was even right before that. That's when I think Amelie confesses to you that, hey, Bridget Strand and I are one and the same. Yeah. Like, Amelie is not Bridget Strand's daughter.
So so Bridget is the Ha, or I guess the like physical form, and then Amelie is the Ka, which is the soul, or like the spiritual form. They've been separated through like a unique happenstance. And part of the other revelation is that, this happened, I guess, when Bridget was 20 or something like that. And when it happened, because I don't remember, they said she had cancer, but I don't remember if this was like a way of saying she didn't actually have cancer. It was this. I don't remember, but basically through this series of events, she is unable to have child.
Yeah.
Which, I think part of it's because it had been like a whole month plus since I had played the opening of the game. But like to me, it was like, oh, she can't have a kid, so Amelie's not her daughter. Amelie is her. Like, okay, got it. But I didn't think about the other fact that like, well, wait, this game opens up with them saying that Sam is her son.
Yeah.
Now at this point, I'd already kind of had suspicions that like, oh, I think Cliff is Sam's dad. Because there was like a specific thing that said that kind of like made me think, oh, got it. But even then, I still didn't like think about that aspect of it. But what you were saying, I think the entirety of episode 13, the like actual game parts, which again are probably 10 or 15 minutes, I really felt like they could have done something different. And that's between the story dumps and also like the credits.
Yeah, how did you feel about Amelie walking out into that kind of explosion thing and you having the revolver?
Yeah, so that was...
And kind of like a fake out a little bit.
I definitely hinted at, like, when I was saying earlier, like, there's a part in the game where, like, this part of the game says, oh, I think you know what to do. And
how could you
Sam,
not, or
Sam,
something like that?
Yeah, at this point, after everything you've been through, how could you not? And Sam's like, but wait, I don't know. That's definitely how I felt. Like, they give you a gun, and I think instinctually probably the way that everyone reacted, or almost everyone, like it has like its ammo count is 5, so I took like 5 shots at her, but it just went through her. It didn't impact her at all.
Yeah.
So I actually got a game over at that point.
Me too.
She eventually like activates things and everyone dies, which is great. But I that part I think I had to look up because you have to hug her. So you walk up to her and press R2 to hug her, but to get the button prompt that allows you to do that, you have to put the gun away.
So I actually had a thing that said helpful hint on my game.
Weird.
It like popped up and like right when it's like helpful hint, like I have the gun pointed at it, which is like you could also interact if you don't have the gun equipped. I'm like, oh, okay, thanks. So yeah, that was like kind of like, I guess I had the hint system on or whatnot. But yeah, you're able to hug Amelie, and that's kind of where I guess you end up stopping the sixth extinction ending, because you can either like end it all now with dignity because humanity only has like, it's going to happen sooner or later, so might as well just let it happen now.
She says something about like letting humanity live to die another day, or something to that effect. But yeah, I wanted to, I guess, so in the moment of episode 13, there's between the info dumps, you just walk around randomly without any purpose. It's just a big beach. You're blue. And then also in the credits are rolling, and it's playing like the first credits, I should say. And it's just like the text above the game screen. So you're still like there, you're still walking around. But this is and these are not short credits, but you're just walking around aimlessly. And on one respect, I get it. Like, yeah, I think what it's trying to convey is that you're stuck there on that beach, with nowhere to go,
eternity,
right? And so I think in that respect, I totally get it. And if that was the goal, I don't know what I would have done differently. I guess I don't know. In the moment, my thought process was, I thought about in the season 1 of Life is Strange. Actually, I think it's in the final episode. There's the part where you're walking through. There's just like, you're in a big black nothing. And you're walking between like points of like where you like visually you see a scene, and you're walking through like it's like kind of like your memory of the season, and you're seeing like a scene play out, and then you walk to the next one, and there's like some little stealth stuff going on there too. So like it's interesting. It is just walking from point to point to hear exposition, but there's stuff happening. So I thought about that, and I thought about what if instead, like as you're trying to get to her beach, or like when you like something happens and it's you and Amelie, but you're not really at the beach yet. You're like in this other weird Hideo Kojima mindscape, and you're like walking between things, and she's narrating to you like the events that like the info dump. I don't know. I just had this thought of like there could be something more interesting happening here other than what was. And with the credits, I mean, if they did that and then the credits was just you're on the beach, and like maybe like there's mountains surrounding the beach, so maybe you could like go up and like try and climb them, but every time you would slip and fall, or something would happen that would have you go back to the beach, to kind of like demonstrate even more that like, hey, you're stuck here. And if they like, I don't know, like I definitely felt like that's something that I didn't like. It doesn't sour me too much on the game, but I definitely felt like it could have been handled a lot better. And I just wonder if it was done the way it was because of time constraints.
Yeah, I could see that. Another part that threw back to MGS4 through all of these info dumps where you're like just sitting there and Amelie's talking, like walking around you, is like it was very much the MGS4 Rat Patrol 01 is an anagram for Patriots. Like, oh my god, my name Amelie stands for soul, and then lie, so I'm alive soul or something. So she's like, and it's because not that it isn't already, but it's becoming such a huge trope now. I guess in video games, because I'm seeing it happen all the time now. This like, this name that's been in front of you the whole time, it actually has a second meaning, and let me flip this around. And so she writes her name like in the air, Amelie, and she's like, comes from the French for soul and lie. So it's not a true soul, or like something like that. And it was, and I remember thinking again at the moment, like, so this whole time that we've like had this character pre-release, we know her name is Amelie. Did anyone piece that together? I guess not. Like, I guess they couldn't do that where it's like Joachim Mogren or something like that. You know what I mean? It's like he loves the name. And I mentioned
like, I think to you, we were watching the Game Awards and we were talking about Bravely Default. And the first game, Bravely Default, the subtitle is like the fairy flies or something like that.
Yeah, Flying Fairy, I think.
And towards the end of the game, spoilers for Bravely Default, that is. But at the end of the game, like there's a thing that happens, and the subtitle gets switched around. And even if you like shut the game off and go to load it at the menu screen, the subtitle has changed. And it's the subtitle is now "The Fairy Lies," and it's this like revelation that the fairy has been is a traitor and has been betraying you, and it's actually like
okay.
And it's a really cool moment, right? But it's like Voldemort. It's Amelie. And it's like, all right, great. So yeah, there's a lot of like really crazy stuff that happens in that info dump. Namely, it's the revelation that Bridget and Amelie are one and the same. That I definitely felt like, I mean, you talk about MGS4, right? There's like so much stuff thrown at you, especially at the end. There's all this crazy stuff happening, but when the information is being like given to you, it's also happening while crazy stuff is going on. Think about the hallway scene, right? Like that scene is so memorable. Even though it is a point A to point B, it's the context and the actual thing that's happening. And so like I get where they're coming from. Like I totally get the idea of like you're stranded on the beach. We want to convey that by having you wonder and not be able to leave. But I don't know if it really like had the impact they were wanting it to.
Yeah, I'd agree. Because even like when you're sitting down, all you can do is just move the camera.
Yeah.
And it felt like tedious with Amelie just continually walking in circles.
So
I'm just rotating
I didn't mind that
the
too
camera
much
nonstop.
because I love being able to be my own director in video games.
Yeah, sure.
So like that I totally like. I was just working that right analog stick. I was
as slowly as possible,
panning slowly around, like panning different directions, having it line up for just doing my best to make it as cinematic as possible.
Maybe that's what Kojima wanted.
It probably
that's what he felt too.
Was.
Yeah.
Somewhere he's just like, yes. So, credits roll.
Well, yeah. So the first credits
set
overlay.
Of credits roll. And then we come. How do? Oh, okay.
So you take out the gun.
The gun. This has no.
Yeah.
This won't help you here, but it does have a purpose. You try to kill yourself, Metal Gear Solid 4 style. Does not work.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Trailers. That part's in the trailer where he's holding the gun up to his head.
Yeah. The other striking thing to me visually is, and this goes back to the very first reveal trailer for Death Stranding. As it ends on, it pans up to the sky and we see the 5 like figures. And I think that like it's kind of we're led to believe like, oh, those are the BTs. And I guess like maybe they are, but in this sequence you start to hear the voices of Lochna, Deadman, Heartman, Fragile.
And there's somebody else, Die Hardman. Maybe.
I think maybe
because there's the 5.
Yeah, and you can hear them. Yeah, I think it's Die Hardman. Or maybe it's Lochna and Mama.
Yeah, maybe.
Like maybe I don't remember specifically, but there are 5 voices, and it's all your buddies. And they're like, you can kind of hear them like, oh, he's over here. We found him. And as it's happening, you're seeing, and you can walk around and you can hear like where the direction of the voice is coming from. So you're walking closer to the water and you see the 5 figures above. And it was like that moment of like, oh, that's them. Maybe, or maybe it's not. I don't know.
I still don't think that's who they are. But I mean, yeah, I guess I understand that. But I've always thought they were the 5 other extinction entities.
And I think that's totally like possible as well, and maybe more likely. So yeah, and so they you hear them, and then eventually Deadman comes out and like he grabs you, and he's like, "Gotcha." Which again, it feels like the delivery of that line felt very just like Metal Gear almost.
Yeah,
it reminds me of the scene in Metal Gear Solid 4 where is it like you're fighting Liquid Snake and he like falls to the ground and you think you got him, and he waits and he gets up and he's like, "I gotcha," and he's like, "Gotcha."
Yeah. I don't know, because the one I thought about was when you're getting ready to plant the C3 in Metal Gear Solid 3 where he like makes it a butterfly and then he like throws it up and catches it and he's like, "Gotcha," or something like that. I don't remember, but yeah, I thought of that too.
Yeah. So good.
But you
you
get pulled back into you get pulled into back to the world of the living.
Mm-hmm.
They found you because I think it was that connection of Die Hardman's pistol was able to find you were like on your own beach in like a far scattered corner of it or something like that.
Yep. So they find you, they pull you back. And once they pull you back, do we just skip into episode 14 and we skip ahead a little bit?
I don't know where the exact cutoff is, but it is. I think we're still in 13 because I don't think episode 14 starts until you actually start the delivery to go to the incinerator.
Oh, okay.
But you're basically starting there. Yeah, so we're basically at the inauguration of Die Hardman.
So Die Hardman is named the new president of the United States of America, and he's giving this speech in the Oval Office, or what is currently the Oval Office, I guess. I don't really know. And so, and like a lot of there's like some other like just random characters, but it's like most of the main cast, right? They're all standing there. And like pans over to Sam, and he kind of starts talking about Sam, like the one who doesn't get the love he deserves or whatever for the work he did, and Sam's
a real hero.
The real hero, story. And there's a lot of talk about like not hiding behind the mask, and so Die Hardman takes this mask off again, which we've like seen a few times in the story. But Sam's walks out into the hallway, and there's a lot of stuff that goes down like at this point. Some of it I think doesn't, like the timeline on some of the things that are about to happen doesn't fully like make sense, and we'll get into that. But first you have a conversation with Deadman, and Deadman gives you some information on Die Hardman, and he's like, hey, like he did this and this, he's the one that killed Cliff, like blah blah blah, like don't trust him. It's like another pep talk of don't trust him. So he walks off, and as he walks off, Die Hardman walks up to you, like immediately. They pass each other in the hallway. And Die Hardman walks up, and I'm thinking at this point, like, here we go. Like, this guy...
fight?
This, like, we might not fight right now, but this guy's gonna, like, he's gonna spin some webs here, and it's gonna lead up, like, this guy's gonna be the final boss. Like, this is it. Here we go. And he walks up to you and just immediately confesses to everything. Sort of.
I was gonna say, he does, but I think I will definitively say this is the best scene in the game.
Oh yeah.
Without a doubt. Die Hardman's just confession, and apparently Tommy Earl Jenkins like said it was in like one take. Yeah. I don't know if you saw
it's impressive. I haven't, but it's impressive. Like it's
fantastic.
And the thing that bums me out a little bit is like, it just feels like it comes out of nowhere almost. Sure. Like there's this build up to like Die Hardman, like maybe we can't trust him. And then like immediately after one of those conversations, he just walks up to you and says, I did it. I killed Cliff. But you're right. Like that monologue from him is incredible. Like he drops to his knees, like, and again, it's like, it speaks to just visually how good this game looks. And their character models and the amount of emotion they're getting out of the motion capture they're doing and the acting, like everything coming together in that moment is incredible. Yeah.
Like even the line has like, there is no atoning for what I've done. Like that was like a really big one. Where he even says like, maybe that's why I've been brought back so many times, is just to continue being Die Hardman, but that's when Sam
I die
says,
hard or something like that.
Yeah, and even Sam was like, no, like that's not it. Like nobody wants a president who thinks they're immortal.
Yeah, which boy, on the nose a bit, but it's fine. It's totally okay. But
I was watching. You said on the nose a couple of times. I was watching Tim Rogers from Kotaku. Yeah. And there was like so many times, like if it was any more on the nose, it would be a nose. Yeah. It's like, I think, like, pretty much.
Tim Rogers, his videos that are always an hour plus long, but I think his like review of Death Stranding I probably watched 2 or 3 times, or just played and listened to.
Yeah.
But because but it's that scene ends with Sam being like saying exactly what you just said, and like Die Hardman's like takes the mask off. He's like, thank you, Sam. Like, yes. Yeah. I understand. Yeah. And like So that's cool. That's a good like kind of closing on him. It feels like.
Mm-hmm.
His confession felt abrupt, but it was like immediately made okay because he just sells it. Like,
yeah, because like, is before you finished it, but like, Mads Mikkelsen won like best performance or whatever, and at the Game Awards, and then I was like, after playing this segment, I was like, man, I don't know, like Tommy Earl Jenkins should have probably won it just for that scene.
yeah.
Alone.
And that was I guess it gets into a conversation about expectations and knowing what like. This is a game where I kept hearing just through Twitter or elsewhere people talk about like, oh my god, like just finished Death Stranding. Matt Mikkelsen's performance at the end of this game is like out of this world, and like I definitely felt like going into these last 4 or 5 chapters, knowing that I'm coming up on like movie length cutscenes, or not quite. I think an hour and 10 might be the longest, but even though still it's quite long. They didn't feel that way, by the way, but I definitely went into this feeling like, all right, Mads Mikkelsen, let's see what you got, and he's terrific.
I think it's fantastic.
He's great. He's great. But I do think I agree with you. I think that moment from Die Hard Man was probably like when we talk about acting specifically, I think that's like the moment for me. But it was like so nice to like get to those last couple cutscenes. The big like flashbacks really, and we'll get to those in a little bit with Clifford, and like just seeing Mads just let it rip basically was great.
Yeah.
So we have the confession of Die Hard Man. We end up talking to Dead Man again. I might be skipping a little bit, but he basically is like, hey, gives you the bad news that BB has died.
Yeah.
And he's like, well,
needs to be taken to the incinerator.
We have to go to the incinerator. And this is the incinerator that is at from the beginning of the game. You have to take Bridget Strand when she dies. You have to take her there. It's your first mission of the game, basically. What's interesting about this segment is, so when you leave and you start your journey there, it starts playing the BB's theme, which is a great, like, probably one of the better songs of the soundtrack. But also, you can't pull up your map.
Oh, I guess I hadn't
at all
thought of that.
I tried it like because I wanted to make sure I was going the right way. But you basically just do it from memory. It's just like like the incinerator is not very far and it's pretty easy to get to. But it's definitely like you just go from memory.
Huh. Yeah, because I knew where it was.
Yeah. But I thought it was interesting for sure. So you make your way there. You get to the incinerator, and one of the things that Dead Man tells you is he's like, hey, if you take your handcuffs off, or whatever they're called in the game, they can't track you. Yeah. They're like, once you take those off, like, as long as the incinerator is activated, they won't know a thing. So there's definitely like that groundwork for like, hey, you can make a choice here. So you get to the incinerator, and one last time you jack in to the BB. You connect up to its mechanism that's inside, and you get one last flashback. Now this one we get to see and clear. Everything. We get to see everything. It's not a first person view from the BB, and this is when we learn the truth.
Yep.
So take me through this.
Okay, so we learn that Mads or Clifford has a wife named Lisa, and she died, and the stillborn child is the BB. And so they're continually running tests on it, and you find out that Bridget Strand is also being a part of this, and she keeps lying to Clifford about like, oh, you'll get your BB back soon. We'll, do this. Everything will be fine. So then it is eventually a part of the kind of the personnel is John Die Hardman basically comes in and reunites with Clifford saying, hey, tomorrow they're going to take BB to some other lab, some other facility, and you will never see him again. And that's also when Die Hardman says that, I am still alive because of you. Your family does not deserve this. and basically I'm going to try and help you escape. So, tries to like shut off like a panel, gives Clifford a gun, where Clifford then ends up killing his wife because like basically saying like I can't do anything more for her. So kills her, and then that's when Mads and Clifford try to take the BB kind of through the hallway. That kind of escape sequence does not go very well.
No, it does not.
tries to be kind of subtle about some things. Gets shot, ends up finding himself back in the original room where killed Lisa.
And one thing we should say about Lisa, and I don't remember when this is, because it's said before this flashback, I believe. I think it's Deadman telling you that he has his wife. But when he tells you that, he says that her name was Lisa Bridges, right?
I can't remember if that was it or not. But you might be right. I couldn't remember
because
if it was Bridges
because that was the moment for me. I remember it was a little before this, but that was the moment for me where I was like, "Oh crap, he's your dad."
Yeah,
probably. Or like I wasn't like 100%, but I'm like, that seems like where this is going, huh?
Yeah, I guess I can't remember the moment that it like hit me.
Yeah,
I guess, but so kind of what you're seeing is that like even all the BB flashbacks, they're more like your flashbacks, not Lou's flashbacks. But yeah, so we've seen this moment before in some of the flashbacks of being like Bridget telling Die Hardman to like shoot Mads, basically shoot Clifford.
Yeah.
And it gets to the point where like even Sam is like, don't do it. And of course he's like kind of just seeing a hologram.
Right.
And that's when the trigger is about to be pulled, Clifford starts talking to Sam.
Yeah, he says
about like
they said you're Sam Porter.
Sam Porter, that's
but
right.
You're Sam Bridges or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he like kind of gets up and it's like that weird thing where like, we've seen it happen in movies and games and books or whatever, where you have the character who is seeing the flashback and they're there, but they're not like there. The characters don't see them, right? And like this is the moment where that kind of breaks for Clifford's character, because he then like turns around and looks at you and grabs you, and he's like, I just want my son, you, or something, something like that. And then they hug or they embrace, and then we hear a gunshot, and we see that John or Die Hardman and Bridget, with her hand on the gun, has pulled the trigger, killing Cliff and killing Sam, who's currently a baby. So they kill both of them, and you hear Bridget go like, "Oh my god!" Like she's like screaming, realizing that
not BB2,
not the BB2. Which we then come to learn is like the catalyst for, like Amelie takes, or like Bridget takes the BB to the as Amelie to the beach, where she's able to revive Sam in baby form, like as a baby, and because she does that makes him a repatriate. So they're able to bring him back, and they have him like in like the BB pod. You see, there's like a scene, and that's when Bridget's like, he won't do it. Like he doesn't, like, because of what's happened, he won't be able to like properly function as a BB. So she's like, take him out of the pod. I'll raise him as my own. Yeah. And so we kind of get that final explanation of like, this is how this has all come into play, and those events are what triggers the Death Stranding or like whatever. So yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, and like we kind of saw that scene right before, like it was like episode 11 or 12, where you're like, oh, what's Amelie picking up this baby and healing it, and like that has the scar, and you see at the very beginning of the game that Sam has like this very like, it's almost like this cross scar, of course, very much stomach, like the boss kind of scar, or snake or Peace Walker scar kind of thing. But yeah, that's essentially like the big kind of reveal, which then kind of flashbacks to where you have the incinerator about, hey, you could take Lou out of the pod just to see what happens, just to see, but that's also like against a direct order from the president. So of course you do, like, so you set the cufflinks and the BB pod in the incinerator, as if like, oh, okay, this is like we're going to incinerate them both. But then, of course, at the last second,
he takes the pod.
Sam takes the pod, opens it up, and it does the thing where it looks like BB or Lou is dead still, but then comes back to life.
It takes some moments. It takes some work. But Sam does successfully bring the BB back, or bring Lou back to life.
Yeah.
And they walk out into the rain, and we, I guess, quickly learn, or they expect us to realize that the rain no longer has the effects of the timefall, because they were both able to walk out and be in the rain and be in contact with the rain and not suffer any of the side effects.
Right.
And scene.
That's pretty much it. That's when the final credits roll, and we do get, I think it's the post-credits scene. That's like, oh, Luis, or something like that, and you learn that it's a girl. So
yeah,
that's essentially Death Stranding. I don't know. I'm sure we left something out towards the end of all of that. But Bridget Strand is not a good person.
No, it turns out.
Say. Yeah. Yeah.
And
then that's when that's when it goes.
Episode 15.
2 weeks earlier, of course, titled "Tomorrow is in Your Hands." Yeah. And that's kind of like where the end game happens, which is like basically the main mission is just pass time before the inauguration.
Yeah. So you're able to just go and finish up everything, get the platinum, get all the achievements. Or wait, no, it's only on PS4. Whoops. Well, when it comes to PC,
yeah.
So get your trophies and platinum and everything. I probably won't do that. I think I've had my fill for now. Maybe I'll go back.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's gonna take me a while if I decide that I want to come back to it and platinum it.
But man, what a game! What a wild game.
I started enjoying it a lot more towards the end than I did at the beginning, because there was a part, especially in like 3, 4, 5, those episodes, I was really just like, can we just hurry this up?
Yeah.
Like, can we just, like, the only reason I'm playing this is just for the story and that it's a Hideo Kojima game. Yeah. Other than that, I probably would have stopped playing.
Yeah. And I mean, we, for the past few years now, since its announcement, you and I both talked about this game. We've, post Phantom Pain, we've talked about what this game will be, and I've let my own fears be said of like, I'm worried that, like, for as much as I dislike Phantom Pain, like, what if this is just that again? Like, and I'm at least for me, I walk away very satisfied and very happy with how it turned out. I do think that there's elements of it that I would change or that I think could be better. But overall, and really, like, nothing will ever take away, like, the feelings I had, especially in episode 3, for, like, the vast majority of this game. At least, like, close to half of this game I spent in episode 3, right? And these are the overwhelmingly positive feelings I had from the game just in that episode alone. Like, those aren't going away, Sekiro is still, by and large, like, my game of the year, I think. But this is, like, this comes close in a lot of ways, I feel like. And a lot of people joked about, I think, pre-release Kojima, there was an interview where he was like, this is the Strand genre. It's a whole new genre of game.
Yeah.
And, like, honestly, like, yeah, I get, like, sure. Like, I actually don't think that's entirely ridiculous to say.
Sure.
I think having played it and knowing what this game is, I genuinely... It's a lot. I think a lot of times we fall into the trap of, like, I've never played anything like this before. I feel like this is maybe one of the few games that, like, genuinely I can say that about and really mean it.
Yeah, I agree.
There isn't anything like this, for better or worse. And if you don't like this, that's fine. But I don't think you can argue and say that, like, X, Y, and Z are just like this game, because they're not. Like, this is something wholly unique on its own.
Which brings me to a point. I don't know if you saw this video, but I had like an, oh my gosh, you're totally right. It's a Kotaku video. That it's the Spoilercast between Tim Rogers and I think it's Heather Alexandra.
Sounds right.
I don't know if you saw that one or not. But at the very end of that video, Heather Alexandra goes, there's a lot of Metal Gear Survive in this game.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you are totally right with like item management and weight and just how you're using supplies and how these supplies help like other people out in the world. Like there's a lot of Metal Gear Survive in this game.
Interesting.
Which I thought that was like, I did not even think about that,
Huh.
but I thought that was like pretty fascinating. Like, and even,
and I mean,
just
like,
kind of how the enemies are like BTs and like all of that stuff. It's
that's super interesting. You got to wonder if there is a history there. With, like the way the timeline would line up.
Yeah, and she even mentioned like I'm sure there were like ideas floating around at Kojima Productions and Konami that I'm sure there might be some overlap of ideas. Yeah, for sure.
That's super interesting.
Yeah, I thought that was like wow, like you're right. There is kind of a lot of overlap between that.
So
I liked it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I'm gonna say I love it.
Yeah.
I think I echo a lot of people's sentiments that like I can't see myself ever replaying this game,
and I probably would say the same. I think this is due to the nature of the game. I think it's definitely one that can be like, and one of the reasons why I didn't even finish it earlier in the last week is because it's something that if you're gonna sit down to play it, you got to sit down for it. Like you got to be invested for like a while.
You can't be like, I'm just gonna do episode.
I'm just gonna play for 30 minutes. Like does not exist for this game. And I think with that in mind, it makes it a hard game to go back to, knowing that you've got to really dedicate a lot of time to this to get any. It's the perfect example of a game that the more you put in, the more you get out of.
Yeah,
like I think people would hate this game if they want to just kind of mainline the story.
Yeah. And I definitely did do that towards the end, where like I was just, I don't know if the word is like sick, but like I was kind of getting tired of it. And I know a lot of people make, and specifically with the name of episodes, this really does feel like a 14-part television series.
Sure.
Like, and I've seen people echo that, being like, oh, this probably would have been better as a TV series. I'm like, maybe, but it's the friends we made along the way.
I think this has to be a game. I think it's because of its asynchronous multiplayer, because of the way you're actually going and because of the people. Themes of this game and the way it ties into what the gameplay actually is. Like I think it has to be a game, it has to be a game.
Yeah. And I will say, like, I really did feel like when I finished this game, and this might be just this dumb cliche to say it, but like I really kind of felt like I wanted to go out and meet more people.
Good.
After playing this game, I'm like, like all these different people you meet and just like connections, and like, hey, even the people that are like, screw you, I don't want nothing to do with you, like even just like helping those people, it's almost like kind of like, you could easily burn bridges, like, oh, there's somebody, that kind of term, but it's like, oh, there's somebody at work I don't like, and I could just yell at him and like really tell him off. But like, what if like you are, still somewhat like decent to them, and like you still help them out, and like how they can help you out maybe later in life, or how those connections that this person knows could help you with a different career, like it is kind of like the understanding of not burning bridges and like creating them instead of getting rid of them.
And for as on the nose as the writing will be, of course, and like as hammy as it might get, like I do think there's something really positive and amazing to take away from, not just that the story is so heavily focused on making these connections and building a brighter future for the world, but the fact that all of that is like intrinsically designed in the actual gameplay. Like it is not just, hey, here's a story about how we're gonna make a better world. Let's go up and but we're gonna do it by like beating up people. And
we're gonna Nathan Drake. We're gonna
beat the bosses, and we're gonna make a better world that way. It's like, no, we're gonna do it because we're gonna build up an infrastructure for the country. We're gonna connect everyone together so that people can get supplies easier. We're gonna build roads. We're gonna build literal bridges. Like we're gonna make it easier for people, and we're gonna connect together and make this better. And like the fact that is actually like moment to moment what you're doing is what sells that and what makes it such a powerful like story and also just experience. Like it's great, and it's it's kind of trite to say, but I think, and like you probably hear it every so often in a review for a show or movie or game or whatever, but this is totally one of those things that like mid episode 3 I was like, man, this is like the story we need right now. This is it. This is
Yeah,
like
exactly.
this
Yep.
game. If everyone played it, they'd all understand, and they would and we
Mhm.
could come together.
Yeah.
Like that was me knee deep in it. But
We can build a better America.
oh man,
Yeah.
and yeah, they're as much as they're probably right about it. There being a lot of Metal Gear Survive in this. There's a lot of just Metal Gear and a lot of in this
Yeah,
too.
there is.
And it's great. It's great to like have this back. You know, it's. I felt like with the Phantom Pain, probably a lot due to the situation around that game. I felt like it dropped a lot of the things I was missing. Or I felt like that game showed me a lot. There was a lot of things I was missing from that game that Death Stranding like has. And it doesn't have to be Metal Gear to have it. It still has it. It's just that weird Kojima touch.
Well, even just the beginning, just the like, oh, kept you waiting, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, the legend has returned.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have a question. Okay. Would you want a sequel to this?
So I thought about it. I remember like a lot of my thoughts in this game definitely came like mid episode 3 for obvious reasons. But I remember like as I'm building roads and stuff, I remember thinking about what I would want a sequel to be. And yeah, like it's been a month since like I remember having thoughts about what I would want a sequel to be, and and a lot of those thoughts really focused around how would they what could they do to expand upon the multiplayer stuff right now? Or I wouldn't even the online mechanics, not really multiplayer.
Sure.
I was thinking a lot about like what could be done to expand upon those or to make them different. What kind of like maybe different environments? Like we really have like a snow area, and then kind of like there's a volcanic area. I guess there's kind of a desert. Like I guess there's a few different biomes, but like I was thinking about different biomes that could be available. I think
space.
Yes. But like, and that would be cool too, right? Like, because part of me also like thought of this game as kind of like an Oregon Trail kind of thing, where you're just going out and exploring and finding things. I think a Death Stranding style, like, or a game in the Strand genre, we'll say, that is like from Kojima Productions, that whether a sequel or not, but the same kind of genre. Like maybe it's like a Dark Souls 2 style thing where it's kind of connected, but not really. But it is, but not. Like Death Stranding on Mars, right? Where you're like Mars Stranding, where you're just like, we're on a planet, we don't know anything about this. Let's go explore it. And as you're exploring, you're connecting hubs together to create a network. Like that would be, I think that would be super cool. Is if it was based more, not so much on here's this apocalyptic event that's happening. It's we're exploring a new world.
Yeah.
And I think that's like a story conceit or a setup that would work really well with this kind of gameplay. And maybe not even from Kojima Productions. That was definitely a thought I had, was like, if we want to like, it felt, oh man, I know we're
Hello Games presents.
It's the second comparison I'm making in this episode, so we got to end soon. But it felt like playing Dark Souls, where you're like, all right, this is the one. Like people are gonna make games based around this, you know. And that was a decade ago, and turns out like it did, like that happened, right?
Yeah,
you know,
for
we're
sure.
still getting games that are deemed Souls like.
Yeah.
And I had that thought. I was like, what if like is Death Stranding a game that, you know, 2 or 3 years from now, we're going to see some other developer come up and be like, and have this game, and then someone's going to play it and go, this has a lot of Death Stranding in it. And maybe not, maybe it won't. But with as divisive as the game has turned out to be, maybe it won't. But I wondered that, like, what if another developer came along and said, yeah, like, I mean, you mentioned No Man's Sky, but like, what if they said, yeah, like, we really like these mechanics, we want to base it on a game where you're just completely exploring a whole new continent or a whole new like landmass or like or a world or whatever it is. Like we really like these mechanics of traversal. We want to use it in a story that's about discovering a new place, and building it up or something like that. Could be really interesting and have a lot of the same mechanics, and even work similarly with the online stuff. That's what I would want
for sure.
out of a sequel or out of a follow-up is something like that, where it's a new setting, new characters, like not an apocalyptic setting at all, or maybe even something, if they can get away with it, that doesn't have any combat at all.
Yeah, I mean, they even mentioned that, like, it might be hundreds of thousands of years before the final. So it's like, they could pull a near automata where it's like hundreds and hundreds of years into the future.
I want to see Yoko Taro's take on the Strand genre.
Of course,
because that would be the end of video games as we know it.
Yeah, and it would just delete the world, not even just your save file. It'd be deleting the world.
Yeah.
I don't know. The deleting the save file at the end is the last.
I mean, I guess the credits for Nier Automata is essentially Yoko Taro's Death Stranding.
That is true. Yeah. That is the title of this.
We have talked for very long. Collin.
Yes.
Let's wrap up. What's your closing thoughts on Death Stranding? It's come and gone. What's your closing thoughts, and then what is your dream Kojima Productions game following this that isn't like a Death Stranding style thing?
Oh my gosh. Oh man. So, final thoughts. I think the thing that's really going to stick with me is we've had big name actors and performances in video games before, like Ellen Page, Willem Dafoe, Beyond Two Souls. Like, we had the Kevin Spaceys in Advanced Warfare. And while I think like some of those performances were good, I think this is the one where like, wow, like even like the big name actors, I think that the performances were really fantastic. Mm-hmm. There were parts where Norman Reedus was Big Boss in Metal Gear Solid 5, where he just basically stood there and just accepted dialogue for a long time. Yeah. And even with everything said and done, like I would put Norman Reedus on the, like, I guess lower end of the performances in this game. Even thinking of like, he's probably not going to get a lot, specifically like how many performances he's done, but Troy Baker, I think one of his best performances probably in this game, like really just kind of lets him run loose, being like just like a psychopath, being kind of that lunatic kind of actor, where I thought he was fantastic. Even like going back and looking at it, he's really not in the game like cutscene wise all that much. But yeah, like even just Tommy Earl Jenkins, Die Hardman, Lindsay Wagner being Bridget and Amelie. I thought really just the performances were fantastic, and I think a lot of that comes from just probably Kojima. Like, if he's being that Neil Druckmann kind of like, I'm in the the CG,
he's in the trenches,
mocap
like,
area. He's just there, just directing things like, hey, this was good, but it can be better. Let's redo this, that. Of course, Mads Mikkelsen I thought was great.
And I mean, look, the acting's only ever going to be as good as the director, right? Like, yeah,
for sure. So I think that's probably going to be my biggest takeaway from it. I think about, going back to like playing it again, like, if, we talk about, God of War from last year, if we get God of War 8K edition on PlayStation 6 or something, I'd be like, I might go replay that or something like that. But like, if we get that for like Death Stranding in like a few years, like a remaster or something like that, like I can't see myself wanting to play this again. But I would say that that's probably my biggest takeaway that I will think about. And really what I'd want from just Kojima is just to run loose, do something nuts. I would want him to do something brand new again. Just give him the keys to the castle, and I think that's kind of what what Sony kind of did a little bit. I just still think about like, just giving him the keys and just basically like, hey, at least just deliver us a game. Like, don't be a Fumito Ueda kind of thing. Like, I didn't mean to throw that name under the bus, but it's like, at least give us something.
And you know what? Like, to his credit, they, I'm sure through a lot of help with Sony, and Guerrilla Games even, like, you know what? They did their tour, they found their engine, they made their game, and they put it out in like not that long.
Yeah, and apparently, come to think of it, apparently somebody was saying that I didn't really pay attention to all of it, but I guess like there's like Insomniac Games in the credits, like there's like other first party Sony studios.
I mean, the Ice team is probably in there, right?
Stuff in
like,
there. That's really cool.
So I'd echo pretty much all your thoughts, and just to kind of keep on the tech stuff, like this game doesn't really have any issues, like technically, right? Like not only is it like visually like one of the best looking games I think I've ever played, bar none. And like I don't
Horizon 2 is gonna look fantastic.
Horizon 2 is like I can't like out. I hope to God that that Horizon 2 is announced this year, because I cannot wait to see what that game even looks like. That's gonna be unreal. And like I don't know that I'll play this game again, but man, if they when the inevitable PS5 like upgrade version comes out, like I might just pop in to be like, all right, what does this look like? Because it will probably look crazy, right? Unless it's like not that big of an upgrade, but. Like performance-wise, I'm pretty much in full agreement with you. I do think Norman Reedus, I guess that's maybe just his thing, to be kind of the stoic, like, deep voice, doesn't really say a few words. Like maybe that's just his thing. But I really thought like pretty much across the board, everyone was great. The two that we, Mads Mikkelsen and is it Tommy Earl Jenkins or. Yeah, it's like I think the two of them clearly are like the people that steal the show. I wish that there was more Higgs. I think like every time he's there, it's like, yeah, man, I'm like really digging this, but there wasn't a lot. Which I definitely wish that there was just more of him. That's probably one disappointment. Again, we talked about it like at the beginning of this. I think the soundtrack's incredible. I've been listening to it at least like a couple times a week since the game came out. Probably will listen to it more for the next however long until I get sick of it, which probably isn't much longer, to be honest, because I've listened to it a lot. And I like this. I love this game a whole lot. It's one of my favorites of the year. I'm very pleased with it. I'm very happy it exists. It's kind of insane that it exists. Especially the budget that it had, being the kind of game that it is, it's kind of insane. But I'm really thankful and happy for that. My dream, so like, I think Kojima's been out there recently saying that like, or like tweeting about like making a horror video game. So I know a lot of people have been taking that to mean like, oh, he might already be thinking about this. Like he might already be ready to go. So I'm not going to say like that as my dream game, because like it is. The spiritual successor without actually being a successor to anything for Silent Hills. That is the dream. But the one thing I would love to see Hideo Kojima's like, I want to try and approach this from like, what is Kojima? What's his take on this? If Death Stranding is his take on, I guess, walking simulators for lack of a better word. I want to see Kojima's take on JRPGs.
Yeah, I can see that.
Just let him run wild. Make something crazy. What does the final boss of a JRPG directed by Hideo Kojima look like? Also,
I have no idea.
All of the party members for the JRPG are played by famous American actors and actresses who probably have never touched a JRPG in their life, but in one of the production like preview trailer hype trailers with the interview with the cast, all of them are like, I like, you might not think this, but I've been playing JRPGs my whole life.
Yeah.
And it's like, I can't even, I'm trying to think of like, it's, whoever.
I played Chrono Trigger when I was younger. Yeah. I was on Super Nintendo. I played Chrono Trigger on a PlayStation 2. Yeah. I mean, it's like something completely wrong.
Chrono Trigger came out when my son was born, and their son's like 7.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
We played it together.
Yep. That's fine.
It's like Chris Hemsworth talking about Dragon Quest.
Yeah, I love Dragon Quest. I love something like it.
Have you played Monster Hunter? And then the interview ends.
Yeah.
That's what you have to look forward to in 2024.
Yeah, and it's just like thinking about like, Tom Hanks, Joaquin Phoenix, Scarlett Johansson, all-star.
It's what a cast.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's just all of Hollywood.
And what's great is like the summons that they have are all modeled. Like the characters are not modeled around the actors this time. It's the summons that are. And I just think that's such a unique and interesting concept.
Getting back to our earlier conversation before we started recording, I think this fan fiction sounds fantastic.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Hey, I'll leave you with this. Final Fantasy VII Remake is looking pretty good.
Yeah, March 3rd, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think that's when the date is. Yeah.
March 3rd.
There's so many.
And then a month later are the likely next spoiler cast that we do. Resident Evil 3.
That's true. Man. Yeah, Resident Evil 3, Doom Eternal. I think there's something else that's around that
Animal
time.
Crossing.
I'm forgetting. I mean, there's a lot.
There's a lot.
Yeah. Animal Crossing Spoilercast.
That would be hilarious.
Yeah.
Can we please do that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when Tom... Yeah, no one's rivaled, the just veracity of Higgs since Tom.
We gotta end this, but just to get one last really bad joke in. It would be really funny to do an Animal Crossing spoiler cast that's either a completely made up fan fiction that we've done, or if it's based on the old like something awful fan fiction Animal Crossing from like a decade ago that I read, that's like a horror story based in the Animal Crossing universe. Oh boy, good stuff.
This is a Animal Crossing Wild World if I've ever seen it.
Imagine an Animal Crossing, but with the controls and mechanics of Death Stranding.
Where you can like pick up different apples, and each apple has like a weight limit.
You have to hold the trigger to grab the apple, and then
you can throw apples at Tom Nook.
Yes, but to do it, you have to hit the punch button and then release the trigger at the right time.
You pick up KK Slider's guitar. He lost it, and you get Die Hardman over the thing. Like, no, villager, this is a really fragile mission.
You're like, you gotta deliver this case of musical instruments to the musician in his bunker.
Yes, exactly.
And so you get there, and it's a hologram of KK Slider. And when he talks to you, it's just like...
Yes, that's what I was thinking.
Oh, all right, Colin. Thank you for joining me for this podcast, Spoilercast, that is about as long as 2 ending credits for... it is about the length of the last 2 chapters for Death Stranding, which are the last 2 cutscenes. That's pretty
much it. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
That's our spoiler commentary for those cutscenes. So thanks for joining me. I hope everyone out there has a great holiday, and we'll be back. Never count us out. We'll be back.
Yeah, we'll be back at some point. But remember, tomorrow is in your hands.